Chapter 572. However, this battle between Ling Han and Xinyuan Ziguang did not succeed in the end. Yin Shuiyang made a move, separating the two of them. Haha, tomorrow at noon you can bring your men out and leave this city. Bai Yuan pointed at Ling Han, Helian Xuanxue, and the others as he spoke. After he finished speaking, he left. He had suffered a great defeat, so he naturally did not have the face to stay any longer. Little Yang, why didn't you make him stay? An old woman appeared soundlessly. She held a walking stick in her hand, and although she looked old and clumsy, anyone who looked at her would feel as if their head was about to explode. This showed just how powerful she was. Sister Ma, even if we join forces, can we defeat 7 Flower Blossom Tier Corpse soldiers? Yin Shuiyang countered with a question. The old woman was speechless. The higher the cultivation level of a member of the Thousand Corpse sect, the more terrifying they were, because they could also control more corpse soldiers. Ordinary disciples could only control 1 or 2 corpse soldiers of the same level, and geniuses could easily handle them. However, an existence like Bai Yuan was able to control 7 corpse soldiers. This was too shocking. Moreover, who knew what level these corpse soldiers were at? Low-level Heaven Tier was fine, but mid-level Heaven Tier was a bit troublesome. High-level Heaven Tier was practically invincible, and for peak stage Heaven Tier, it was better to ask Shattering Void Tier elites to come. With the city guarding formation, Bai Yuan definitely couldn't charge in, but he didn't need to charge in either. The 4th killing formation just had to wear him down for a few more days, and Million Treasure City would become a speck of dust in history. However, weren't there still a lot of places to leave the city? Ling Han obtained 90, Hu Niu also obtained 90, Helian Sun Shui obtained 100, Xinyuan Ziguang only obtained 10, and Pang Xiangming also obtained 10, but he himself gave up. There were a total of 190 places, but Ling Han alone had control over the distribution of 180 places. Thus, a large part of the reason Yin Shuiyang stopped the battle between Ling Han and Xinyuan Ziguang was because of the allocation of these spots. Since Bai Yuan swore an oath, it should be trustworthy. The key was that staying here would only lead to death, so even if it was risky, he had to give it a try. Everyone wanted a place to go out. Ling Han thought for a while and came up with an idea: auction. He didn't have a good impression of the so-called rich and powerful families in the city, so he naturally wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to rip them off. That night, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion held a unique auction. There was only one item to be auctioned, and that was the 180 quotas to leave the city. Ling Han did not want gold or silver. He only wanted essence crystals, and it had to be 3-star essence crystals. Of course, whoever was willing to take out 4-star, 5-star, and 6-star essence crystals to snap up the purchase, Ling Han naturally would not refuse. Every quota started from 103-star origin crystals, and after some intense competition, the cheapest quota reached 503-star origin crystals, and the most expensive one was auctioned off for 17,000. That was the last quota, and it caused a frenzied scramble. Excluding the 10% commission he gave to the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, Ling Han still received close to 200,000 3-star origin crystals, which made him beam with joy. After breaking through to the Flower Blossom tier, his cultivation speed slowed down, but with so many 3-star origin crystals, his cultivation speed could increase again. Storing all the origin crystals into the Black Tower, Ling Han was very pleased, and started drinking with Zhu Xian'er and the others in the side courtyard. After drinking, he couldn't fall asleep for a while, so he went for a walk by the lake. Helian Sun Shui naturally stuck to his side, tugging on the corner of his clothes and holding that brick in her hand, looking like she would dare to smash Ling Han if he dared to fling her. As they walked, they saw a black shadow standing by the lake, holding a wine gourd in one hand and pouring fine wine into the lake. The mellow fragrance of the wine spread, causing all the pores on Ling Han's body to relax. This was an exceptional wine, and martial artists would definitely benefit greatly if they drank it. Ling Han's face was filled with reluctance, and he said, dear brother, such fine wine, wouldn't it be a pity to waste it?" That person's back was facing Ling Han, and when he heard the words, he turned around and swept a glance at Ling Han. However, when his gaze swept past Helian Sun Shui, he paused slightly, and a hint of confusion appeared in his eyes, but he immediately recovered his clarity. He laughed loudly, and directly threw the wine gourd to Ling Han, and said, Then I'll treat you to a drink. Ling Han caught the wine gourd and instantly, he felt an astonishing fragrance of wine, making him feel as if he was ascending to become a celestial being. He focused his eyes and saw that the wine was golden in color like fine wine. He was a grandmaster alchemist, so how could he lack understanding of worldly treasures? He blurted out, purple moon ganoderma, thousand wind fruit, purple cloud soul essence void flower. This is monkey's wine. Monkey's wine was said to be a fine wine brewed by monkeys gathering all kinds of spirit fruits and medicinal ingredients. Not only was it delicious and fragrant, but it was also an excellent tonic. The monkey's wine brewed by different levels of demon monkeys also had different effects, and to be able to contain the few medicinal ingredients that Ling Han mentioned, it was definitely brewed by the most top-notch demon monkeys. Even Ling Han didn't have the chance to taste it in his previous life. It could be said that even a drop of this monkey's wine was extremely precious. Although Ling Han made a big profit tonight, taking out all of it wouldn't be enough to buy a drop. Too precious. I didn't think that a youngster like you could actually recognize the raw materials of this monkey's wine. That person was also slightly surprised. Under the illumination of the moonlight, he saw that this was a burly man with a tall and sturdy build. Standing there, he gave people the feeling of a tall mountain, as if even if the sky collapsed he could hold it up. Ling Han was startled. He actually couldn't see through this middle-aged man. But thinking about it, it was normal. This was Million Treasure City, and the appearance of a few high-level heaven-tier elites was not a rare thing. Brother, this wine is too precious, I don't dare to drink it carelessly, Ling Han said with a smile, and threw the wine gourd back. That burly man laughed loudly and said, since you recognize this monkey's wine, then we're fated. Please. He threw the wine gourd back to Ling Han, bold and sincere, making people feel as if they could feel his magnanimous heart. Ling Han didn't act pretentiously anymore and said, then thank you. He raised his head, and the wine inside the gourd instantly poured out, turning into a waterfall that flowed into his mouth. It was only a mouthful, but Ling Han felt like he was going to get drunk. This monkey's wine was both nutritious and strong, directly acting on divine sense. Even spiritual infant tier and deity transformation tier elites would easily get drunk. However, Ling Han still had a sliver of heaven-tier divine sense, and under the tempering of the primal chaos source rock, it was even more tenacious, so he didn't fall down in one mouthful. However, his eyes couldn't help but become hazy. After he tasted his fill, he threw the wine gourd to that burly man, and said, brother, please. That burly man caught the gourd, and also felt a wave of pleasure. He was much more kick-ass than Ling Han, gulping, actually drinking half of the gourd in one go. Ling Han couldn't help but grit his teeth. If he drank half of the gourd, then he'd definitely be drunk to death, going straight to see the king of hell. It couldn't be helped. This was the difference in cultivation level. The other party was definitely a high-level heaven-tier existence. I can't get drunk. That burly man sighed, as if nothing had happened. He was pretending. Chapter 573. Brother, something's on your mind? Ling Han's cultivation level was clearly far lower than the others, but the other didn't reveal his identity, so he was happy to pretend he didn't know. As a former elite of the heaven tier, and an old monster from 10,000 years ago, he was naturally unwilling to address these little guys as seniors. The large man only drank to his heart's content, sorrow showing in his eyes. Say no more, it must be hurt by love, Ling Han immediately said. You can tell that too? The large man turned to him. Ling Han chuckled and said, I've been through it, how can I not tell? Haha, then another toast. The large man said with a laugh. With a shake of his hand, he took out a wine cup, filled it, and threw it to Ling Han. With the strength of such a great elite, he naturally wouldn't spill a single drop of wine. Ling Han didn't dare to do it again. If he did, he would definitely have to lie down, so he took a small sip. The large man didn't force him, and gulped down the wine himself, causing Ling Han's heart to ache. This was really like a cow chewing on a peony, a huge waste. Monkey wine was so precious, and the other drinking it like this was practically a waste. Brother, if there's anything sad, just say it. You'll feel better if you say it, Ling Han advised. The large man took a deep look at Ling Han, and actually really spoke. His story was very simple. A young man fell in love with a young woman. They met at this lake for the first time and fell in love at first sight. Later, they traveled the world hand in hand, loving each other and having a sweet relationship. But perhaps the single dog's resentment was too heavy, and the young woman actually contracted an incurable disease. Even if the young man's cultivation was exceptional, he couldn't find a cure. In the end, the young woman passed away, leaving the young man alone. Every year at this time, the young man would come here to reminisce about his first encounter with the woman. Countless years passed, and the young man also became the uncle of today. Ling Han couldn't help but sympathize, and also told him about the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. Of course, he wouldn't directly say that it was something from 10,000 years ago, and slightly changed his appearance. This time, the two of them really were tortoises and mung beans. They finally met. Actually, the feelings between the two of them were completely different, but both of them had lost their loved ones, so the more they talked, the more they got along. With a bit of drunkenness, the two of them actually became sworn brothers. Second brother, I'm Feng Peyun. If anyone wants to bully you in the future, just say Big Brother's name, the large man said as he hooked his arm around Ling Han's shoulder. I'm Ling Han. Ling Han didn't give him a fake name. The feeling this burly man gave him was one of boldness and magnanimity. He wasn't the type to place too much importance on benefits. Moreover, this person was a true man of character. Sigh, Big Brother, I just can't get drunk. Feng Peyun continuously shook his head, appearing to be extremely regretful. His cultivation level was too high, and it could be said that there was no wine that could make him drunk in this world. This Big Brother was really a weirdo. This monkey's wine was found in the ancient forest because he wanted to get drunk, and he even had a great battle with 3 terrifying monkey beasts, but even so, he still wasn't drunk. Ling Han patted his chest and said, Big Brother, don't worry, I'll definitely brew the best wine in the world for you, making you drunk for 3 years. He really wasn't bragging. In his previous life, he entered too many historical sites, and aside from obtaining many cultivation techniques and martial arts techniques, he also obtained some unorthodox things such as the recipe for brewing wine. There was a kind of divine brew that had nature-defying effects, and was said to make even gods drunk, but the required materials were also ridiculously precious. Even in his previous life, he couldn't have gathered them. In this life, he had the qualifications to advance into the Shattering Void tier, so there was naturally hope of refining divine brew. Ling Han was willing to call him Big Brother because Feng Peyun was already over 400 years old, older than Ling Han's 2 lives combined, so calling him Big Brother was still appropriate. As for the 10,000 years in the soul state, the body was gone, so it obviously wouldn't age, so it couldn't be counted. Then Big Brother will be waiting for you. Feng Peyun laughed loudly. Although the 2 brothers hadn't known each other for long, their temperaments were congenial, and the more they chatted, the more congenial they became. One had to know that Ling Han had lived 2 lives, and in his previous life, he even stood at the top of the world, so how could his knowledge and experience be inferior? They talked for a long time, and in the end Ling Han fell down in a daze. When he opened his eyes again, he saw a snow-white jade neck and a beautiful chin. It turned out that his head was resting on Helian Sun Shue's thigh. As expected, it was flat-chested. Otherwise, from his angle, what he could see would be 2 mountain peaks, and it was impossible to reach her chin, let alone her neck. However, if this Hainyo recovered her memories in the future and recalled this scene, Ling Han instantly broke out in a waterfall-like cold sweat. This was the rhythm of being hunted down. This wine was really fierce. However, Ling Han immediately discovered that his cultivation actually soared by 2 small tiers. One had to know that starting from the flower blossom tier, the increase in cultivation was directly related to the comprehension of martial art, but he actually increased by 2 small tiers in the state of drunkenness. What kind of concept was this? The monkey's wine was really too awesome. Ling Han sighed. However, this was also because it was the first time he drank it, so the effect was the fiercest. If he drank it again next time, there would definitely be benefits, but it definitely wouldn't be so fierce. It should be like spiritual liquid flowing slowly. Moreover, drinking like this was really a bit unbearable. His head was about to explode. Ling Han. Helian Sun Shui called out worriedly. Hainyo, softer, softer. Ling Han hurriedly pressed down with his hand. With her calling out, his head started to buzz again. He took out the spiritual liquid from the black tower, drank a few mouthfuls to sober up, and then cupped some lake water to wash the wine. Only then did he feel slightly better, and said, "Where's my big brother?" "He left," Helian Sun Shui said. Helian Sun Shui said, however, "He said he'll come later and help you resolve a predicament." Resolve a predicament? Could it be referring to the matter of Million Treasure City being trapped? However, although this big brother was fierce, it was the fourth killing formation outside. Let's go back first and talk. Ling Han looked at the sky. It was almost noon, and presumably, those forces that won the spots yesterday were probably going crazy with anxiety. As expected, when he arrived at the city gates, he saw many people glaring at him with extremely unfriendly expressions. "Han Lin, why did you only come now?" someone berated. Ling Han's face was full of disgust, and he covered his ears as he said, "Are you sick? What are you yelling for? Can't you speak properly, you—" That person was a spiritual infant tier elite, and seeing that Ling Han actually dared to speak to him like this, he couldn't help but reveal a furious expression. "Alright, don't let others laugh at you," Yin Shuiyang said, pointing below the city gates. Bai Yuan already appeared. Ling Han said, "The 180 people who won the spots yesterday all leave." He had the Black Tower, so he obviously didn't think about the spots. Moreover, he still wanted to get all the innocent people out of the city. The 180 people left the city gates, and their faces were all filled with the pleasant surprise of surviving a calamity. They could finally leave this damned place. "Old man, you've made this place a foul atmosphere, and I don't like it at all." With a deep shout, a tall figure walked out from the city, waved at Bai Yuan and said, "How Million Treasure City was originally. Restore it to how it was." Chapter 574. Ling Han was surprised. This man that was like a mountain was obviously his sworn brother, Feng Peyun, who he became sworn brothers with yesterday. Who is this, such nerve? Actually daring to call a heaven-tier elite an old man. Don't know, probably an unorthodox person. Trapped in the city for too long, his brain became muddled and crazy. Reasonable. The people on the city wall discussed animatedly. Not everyone had Ling Han's judgment and could see Feng Peyun's strength. In the eyes of ordinary people, this large man was only slightly sturdy and extraordinary, and there wasn't much special about him. However, the heaven-tier elites in the open and in the dark all revealed serious expressions. They couldn't see through this man's strength. This proved one thing. His cultivation wasn't below theirs in the slightest. Bai Yuan was even more careful. With a long howl, the seven-headed coffin slid over from afar. The other party came with ill intentions, and would most likely attack, so he couldn't be careless. Normally, heaven-tier elites pretty much stood at the peak of the world, so they were obviously bold and unrestrained. However, who told the Thousand Corpse sect to be more special? Even the Shattering Void tier sect master hid his head but showed his tail, never showing his true body, so the 7 heaven-tier venerables under him were obviously cautious. At least before the Thousand Corpse sect officially stood in front of everyone, they all maintained a low profile and cautious style. "Who are you?" Bai Yuan shouted. Feng Peyun picked his ears and said, "Is there something wrong with your hearing? I told you to remove this stupid formation, or else I'll personally dismantle it." "Haha, what an arrogant tone, why don't you dismantle it for me?" Bai Yuan said menacingly. This was the 4th killing formation, and although the sect master didn't obtain the complete formation, and could only unleash 50% of its power, killing low-level Shattering Void tier elites wasn't a difficult thing, and this large man actually said he wanted to dismantle it. Humph. Feng Peyun's gaze focused, and like a flash of lightning, Bai Yuan felt pain in his eyes as if his eyeballs were about to explode. So powerful. Bai Yuan was shocked, and hurriedly ordered the corpse soldiers to attack. Pung, 7 coffins opened at the same time and 7 corpse soldiers jumped out. Each of them only had their bones left, but their bones were golden, as if they were made of metal. However, there were inch-long spikes on each bone, giving off an extremely strange feeling. "Just 7 sets of bones and you want to stop me?" Feng Peyun was disdainful. Bai Yuan was furious. These 7 corpse soldiers had been refined with the help of the Lord Sect leader, and in terms of defense alone, they had already reached the peak of the heaven tier. Even a peak heaven tier warrior would have to spend some effort to destroy them. Moreover, the offensive power of these corpse soldiers was not weak at all. After the bone spurs had been tempered 100 times, they could easily tear through the defense of heaven-tier elites. As long as they got close, they could instantly pierce a heaven-tier elite into a bloody hole. Kill! White Eye pointed at Feng Peyun, and suddenly 7 corpse soldiers leaped out at the same time, attacking Feng Peyun. Should we help? An old woman appeared at the top of the city wall and asked Yin Shuiyang. Little Yang, I don't know this person at all. His strength is unfathomable. Let's talk about it first, Yin Shuiyang said, shaking his head. I seem to have seen this person somewhere. Another old man appeared, staring at Feng Peyun with a doubtful expression. Ling Han couldn't help but be a bit worried. These 7 corpse soldiers were all level 3 golden armored corpses, and they had been tempered to the extreme. Even if he recovered the strength of his previous life, he wouldn't dare to fight them head-on, unless it was a freak like Sword Emperor or Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. Feng Peyun didn't take it to heart at all, instead taking out a wine gourd and drinking in large mouthfuls. The wine flowed down the corner of his mouth, and his beard was full of sparkling liquid, full of the vicissitudes of life. The corpse soldiers attacked, and he was instantly submerged in the golden bones. It's over, everyone said inwardly. Those were level 3 golden armored corpses, and being close to them, no matter how strong a heaven-tier elite was, it would probably be hard to escape death. They really didn't think that an elite would actually die in such a useless manner. White Eye sneered. This was the result of not taking him seriously. Did they really think that the 1,000 Corpse sect was easy to bully just because they didn't come out? Wrong, everyone in the 1,000 Corpse sect raised corpses, and each person could at least fight 1 against 2. The higher the tier, the more terrifying the battle prowess. He alone could fight against 6 or 7 heaven-tier elites. How shocking was that? Wang, under the attack of the 7 corpse soldiers, a purple brilliance surged, turning into a circle, and then suddenly exploding. Pong, 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 pong. The 7 corpse soldiers were actually blasted away at the same time, and at the same time the bones that were as strong as the peak stage of the heaven tier were disintegrating, turning into countless broken bones. Purple brilliance flickered, and Feng Peyun stood proudly like a supreme god. His feet stepped on the earth, his head in the sky, and the whole heaven and earth had to crawl and tremble under him. His eyes were like stars and his hair fluttered, emitting a shocking divine light like a divine chain of order that could lock and destroy everything. The supreme aura vibrated, striking the 9 heavens and shaking the 9 underworlds. He was the sole ruler. Pa 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 pa, everyone knelt down. Only heaven-tier elites could barely resist, but they still couldn't hide the anxiety and terror in their hearts, almost not even having the courage to fight. Shattering void tier. Bai Yuan's face was deathly pale, and his expression was extremely dispirited. The 7 corpse soldiers all had a sliver of his divine sense, and now that it was directly erased by Feng Peyun, he also suffered considerable injuries, and now only had 30% of his battle prowess left. However, the 1,000 corpse sect relied on corpse soldiers, and now the 7 corpse soldiers were all dregs. His 30% of battle prowess was only relative to his main body, and his true battle prowess was probably less than 1%. Everyone no longer had a shred of doubt. Only the strongest existence in this world could defeat 7 peak heaven tier corpse soldiers in 1 strike. Shattering void tier. Greetings, my lord. On top of the city walls, Yin Shuiyang and the other heaven tier elites all saluted respectfully. Shattering void tier. Even in the middle state, there were only so many, and they could be counted on one's fingers. Feng Peyun. Finally, someone revealed Feng Peyun's identity. Feng Peyun waved his hand, appearing dispirited, and said to Bai Yuan, "Don't say I'm bullying a child, remove this great formation, and never come to Million Treasure City again." Bai Yuan similarly saluted respectfully. Regardless of whether he was an enemy or a friend, shattering void tier elites had too lofty a status, standing at the peak of humanity, and with another step they could become gods, gaining the admiration of the world. However, after saluting, he said, "Forgive this old man for not being able to obey, Lord Feng. Taking down this city is my sect master's order, and this old man doesn't dare to disobey. Then where's your sect master? Have him come out, and I'll beat him until he's convinced," Feng Peyun said domineeringly. This, Bai Yuan revealed a hint of annoyance. In his mind, the sect master was even more like a god, invincible in humanity, so how could he be insulted lightly? He said, Lord Sectmaster is tied up with trivial matters, and can't come see Lord Feng for a while. Chapter 575. This was a very strange person. His figure was very tall, and his face was simple and unadorned. There were actually lines on his face as if he was born with them, but this was not what was strange about it. Rather, there were actually 2 small buns growing on his head, as if a fawn was about to grow horns. The aura of the heaven tier, and it was an existence of high level or even peak level. Fourth uncle, what's there to talk about with these lowly humans? Just directly take down all of them. A youngster also walked into the palace, dressed in a multicolored battle suit, like a gorgeously dressed peacock. Hellion Xuanxue came over, and lowered her voice to a single line saying, the older one is Xin Yu Cheng, and the younger one is Xin Yu Dongming. Don't provoke them, fool them away. Ling Han suddenly realized that this was the sea race. Truly arrogant, did they really think this was their territory? Thinking again, it was no wonder. Xin Yu alone had close to 30 shattering void tier elites, so what kind of accumulation and terrifying strength was this? In the eyes of the sea race, this was probably a remote and desolate place. However, Xin Yu Dongming Ling Han walked towards the peacock man. This was Hellion Xuanxue's fiancé. He heard Hellion Xuanxue say that the Hellion and Xin Yu families were discussing about joining forces to resist the Wunren royal family together. Because among the 3 great royal families of the North Sea, the Wunren were the strongest, even to the extent that they could annihilate any one of the other 2 families by themselves. Thus, the 2 families could only join forces to resist. But how could they guarantee that everyone was of one mind and not stab each other in the back? Alliance by marriage. Hellion Xuanxue was the most outstanding woman in the younger generation of the Hellion family, while Xin Yu Dongming was the most outstanding man in the Xin Yu family. Although he was still slightly inferior to Hellion Xuanxue, he wasn't much weaker. It was just that Hellion Xuanxue was too dazzling. However, after Hellion Xuanxue discovered the matter of settling accounts, she had a plan to obtain the Vial of Curses, and could only carry it out secretly. Otherwise, once the crime of murdering a royal family member was put on her head, even the royal family would be furious. Unexpectedly, she was bombarded by the large silver spider and lost all her memories, running away with Ling Han from then on. Only after a spring breeze did she recover her memories. She returned to the North Sea, but discovered that she was secretly pregnant, so she no longer had the thought of marrying Xin Yu Dongming, hiding and giving birth to a child. However, paper couldn't contain fire, and the news leaked out, so she could only flee for her life with her son. Now the sea race finally caught up. Ling Han withdrew his gaze, stood up from the throne, and walked over with large strides. He said, I can make the decision, what advice do you have? He wasn't afraid that the 2 from the Xin Yu family would recognize Hellion Xuanxue, because Hellion Xuanxue not only changed her appearance with the appearance alteration pill, but also cultivated his ancient art, capable of changing cultivation and aura. She was now only in the flower life tier, so no matter what, no one would associate her with the Pearl of the North Sea. Xin Yu Cheng's gaze swept over, and a terrifying pressure overflowed, capable of cracking the skin of a deity transformation tier warrior. He intended to give Ling Han a show of strength, but what disappointed and surprised him was that Ling Han looked fine, not the slightest bit affected. This human was somewhat strange. But that was all. Xin Yu family's background was too deep, and even when facing the 5 great ancient sects, he could keep his back straight and even berate them from a higher position. So what did this mere deity transformation tier junior amount to? He opened his mouth and said, This lord wants you to find someone. Oh, who? Ling Han said indifferently, although he already knew in his heart that it was Hellion Xuanxue. Xin Yu Cheng raised his hand and threw out a painting scroll and said, Use all your power to find the girl in the painting. If you find her, this lord will reward you, and if you can't find her, you guys can prepare for your own funerals. Fourth uncle, the environment here is pretty good. Xin Yu Dongming sat on the throne, and said carelessly, Let's stay here and wait. All right. Xin Yu Cheng pondered slightly, then nodded. Although the North region was far from the size of the North Sea, it wasn't something 2 people could find. Even if they ran all over the place, they wouldn't find anything, so it was better to wait here for news. Moreover, although he was a senior, Xinyu Dongming's position in the clan was above his. This boy had very pure ancestral blood, but it hadn't completely recovered yet. His future accomplishments were limitless, and he received the focused nurturing of many shattering void tier elites in the clan. So as long as it wasn't too excessive, he would let Xinyu Dongming do as he pleased. Palace maids over there, bring over the things you're carrying. Xinyu Dongming waved his hand at the palace maids standing solemnly on both sides. These palace maids carried all kinds of fruits in their hands. The colors were alluring, and the fragrance assailed the nostrils, making one's appetite stir. Those palace maids all walked towards Ling Han, and Ling Han's gaze gave rise to a sliver of killing intent, but after seeing Helian Sun Shui, he forcibly suppressed his killing intent and nodded, indicating for those palace maids to do as he was told. The officials in the imperial court all felt humiliated. This was their Great Ling Empire's core of power, representing Great Ling Empire's face, and now an outsider occupied the throne and casually berated it. But what could be done? The other party was too powerful, and even Yuan Chang he couldn't bear that imposing manner. Who could rival him? Forcibly falling out would only be courting death, so the choice was naturally simple. Xinyu Dongming casually took some fruits to eat, and instantly relaxed his brows. He said, "Fourth uncle, these things are really delicious, have a taste." He tossed some fruits to Xinyu Chang. Xinyu Chang was experienced and prudent, obviously not as disregarding his image as Xinyu Dongming. However, the other party had good intentions, and if he didn't accept, it wouldn't be justifiable, so he plucked a grape and put it into his mouth. Instantly, he also revealed a look of astonishment. Too fresh, too delicious. Moreover, the grape also contained a sliver of spiritual power that could be directly absorbed. Although pitifully little, it was definitely good stuff for low-level martial artists. If the Xinyu clan could grow grapes like this in large quantities, then in 20 to 30 years, the clan's entire strength would definitely be able to increase by a level. Xinyu Dongming became more and more presumptuous. He stared at the palace maids, and couldn't help but reveal a bewitching smile as he said, "I didn't expect human women to be so good. Hey steward, in the future prepare a large box of fruits like this for me every month, and also these palace maids 10. Although humans are lowly, there's no harm in playing with them. 10 is enough, I can't play with more." Ling Han revealed a smile, but it was extremely cold. "You ran into my territory, stole my position, and still want me to gift you money and women? What, you're still not convinced?" Xinyu Dongming sneered. What a joke. He, the Grand Xinyu clan of the North Sea, was willing to sit here because he was worthy of you, or else with the lowly and filthy human race, he wouldn't even want to enter. "I plan to stay here for a month, and in this month you find the woman on the picture scroll for me. If you find her, I'll leave, but don't forget the fruits and palace maids every month. If you can't find her, then you can go die," he said. The smile on Ling Han's face became even more resplendent, and he said, "I've tolerated you for so long, but you insist on seeking your own death, so I can only kill you. Heaven's might cannot be violated. Remember it in your next life." Ooh. Chapter 576. Ling Han shook his head and said, "Business must be honest. You bought those spots yourself and used them today, not to be returned." Bullshit. Someone immediately jumped up. "A mere flower blossom tier cultivator dares to be so bold, you're tired of living. Hand over the origin crystals, and we can spare your life. Young man, don't seek your own death because of some worldly possessions." There were some who threatened and some who advised, but all of them wanted to take back the origin crystals from Ling Han. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Spirit Treasures Pavilion takes 10% of the commission. Do you dare ask them for it? That's your business, unrelated to us." Those people immediately said, "What a joke." Spirit Treasures Pavilion had shattering void tier elites overseeing it. Who dared ask them for money? "What if I don't?" Ling Han said with a smile. "That's not up to you." Everyone pressed forward. Those that could take out such a large sum of money were obviously the rich families of the city, with at least spiritual infant tier elites overseeing it. Deity transformation tier elites weren't rare, and there might even be heaven tier backers. Now, it wasn't a matter of 180 people but also the families behind them. With such power, it was enough to sweep through the north region. What did Ling Han use to block? He couldn't block it at all. However, Ling Han smiled without fear and said, "You guys threaten me like this, don't regret it later. Haha, can you also set up some fourth killing formation?" Everyone laughed. "Even if he can, don't we still have a Shattering Void tier elite? Brat, quickly hand over the origin crystals. And you have to compensate, daring to deceive us, hand over your martial art cultivation technique." Right, and martial art cultivation technique. Everyone's eyes lit up. Ling Han's performance earlier was extremely monstrous. Whether it was defense, movement, or attack, they all far surpassed a second layer Flower Blossom tier. When did this brat reach the fourth layer of the Flower Blossom tier? In just one night, he actually advanced 2 minor tiers. Who could believe it? However, everyone's hearts immediately became fiery. This young man had too many secrets, and if they could obtain them, they might be able to change the future of a clan. Everyone surrounded Ling Han, their killing intent surging. Hellion Xuanxua hurriedly raised the brick and said, You guys don't mess around. The person over there is Henin's big brother. She was actually smart and even learned to borrow power." Everyone burst into laughter when they heard that. "Big brother, your sister? A mere Flower Blossom tier cultivator. How could he possibly be the brother of an ultimate elite of the Shattering Void tier?" There was a gap of several hundred years between the two of them. "If you don't hand it over, we'll kill you," said one of them impatiently. "Oh, what do you want to do to my brother?" A voice floated over from afar. Hearing this voice, most of the people immediately shivered. But there were also a few people who just stared at Ling Han and didn't try to explain at all, clamoring, "Of course it's to force him to hand over the origin crystals and cultivation method. How dare you?" Feng Peyun had already walked over, the aura of the Shattering Void tier rolling out. As his step landed, divine patterns bloomed, blooming like celestial flowers. Pa. Everyone hurriedly knelt down again. Feng Peyun walked to Ling Han's side and said with a smile, "Second brother? Is someone trying to harm you?" Ling Han smiled faintly, turned his head towards everyone and said, "My big brother is asking if you guys want to harm me." Everyone was about to cry. He looked at Hellion Sun Shue's face a few more times and said, "Second brother, the sea race's waters are very deep, you have to be careful." Ling Han was surprised and said, "Big brother, you know this Hainyo's identity? A member of the sea race's royal family, a true dragon's descendant," Feng Peyun said casually. The Shattering Void tier was the Shattering Void tier. As expected, it couldn't be hidden from him. Ling Han nodded and said, "This girl lost her memories." He suppressed his voice into a line and told about the ancient mine in the desolate North Fire Country, including that terrifying giant silver spider. "Oh." Feng Peyun immediately revealed a curious expression and said, "Then I'll go." "Big brother, be careful." Ling Han saw the appearance of that giant spider exuding divine might. A mere figure almost shattered his divine sense. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 577. Ha. Second brother has no confidence in big brother? Feng Peyun laughed loudly. Ling Han shook his head and said, "How could I have no confidence in big brother? But I saw that silver divine spider with my own eyes. That's definitely a Shattering Void tier existence, and possibly an extremely high level." Feng Peyun nodded with a smile and said, "Relax, second brother. I'm already at the 7th layer of the Shattering Void tier." The Shattering Void tier stood at the peak of humanity, and the 7th layer of the Shattering Void tier was undoubtedly the peak of the peak, almost invincible. After a slight pause, Ling Han said, "I didn't expect Big Brother to be so powerful. Although appearance couldn't represent true age, this Big Brother's blood and chi soared to the skies, obviously still in his prime. Then, when charging to the 9th layer of the Shattering Void tier, he should be able to maintain his current blood and chi, enough to break through the void. Otherwise, breaking through the void when one was old, and one's blood and chi couldn't keep up, dying in the process of breaking through the void wouldn't be a rare thing. There were such legends since ancient times." Feng Peyun nodded and said, "Second brother, your battle prowess is outstanding, and your talent in martial art is similarly astonishing, already advancing into the Flower Blossom tier at the age of 20. Even I was far inferior back then." In the future, it won't be difficult for you to enter the shattering void tier. However, he paused, his expression solemn. I always have an inexplicable fear, always feeling that if I break through the void, there will be terrifying consequences. Ling Han was puzzled and said, Big brother, don't you have to reach the 9th layer of the shattering void tier to break through the void? Feng Peyun shook his head and said, as long as you advance into the shattering void tier, you'll have the ability to break through the void. It's just that the higher the tier, the lower the difficulty. I haven't taken this step for a long time, firstly because I'm reluctant to leave, and secondly because of the fear in my heart. Ling Han understood that when one's martial arts cultivation reached an extremely high level, one would naturally develop a premonition of the future. It was not a premonition of being able to see the future, but rather a feeling of foreboding and inauspiciousness that would arise after one had decided to do something. In his previous life he was also like this. When exploring historical sites after making a certain choice, he would inexplicably have warning signs, so he would give up and make the opposite choice. However, this was not omnipotent. Otherwise, he would not have lost his physical body due to the Black Tower. Since advancing into the Shattering Void tier means that one can step into the immortal realm, and Big Brother has already reached the 7th layer of the Shattering Void tier, logically speaking, he should be very confident, Ling Han said, puzzled. I don't understand either. Feng Peyun shook his head. I've also asked a few others, and they're all like me, not daring to take that step lightly. The possibility of dying is extremely high. The other people he spoke of must also be Shattering Void tier beings. However, some people clearly know the reason, but are unwilling to say. Feng Peyun continued. Which ones? Ling Han's heart stirred. The Sword King of the Heaven Sword Sect, the Azure Phoenix Heaven Empress of the Cloud Phoenix Sect, the Heaven Shattering Saber of the Absolute Saber Sect, the Thunder Emperor of the Blue Thunder Sect, and the Beast Snake King of the Earth Dragon Sect. Feng Peyun counted with his fingers. This one sees that Thunder Emperor and Azure Phoenix Empress should be at the consummate level of the Shattering Void tier. Logically speaking, they should be more anxious than this one, which is puzzling. Indeed, if one reached the consummate level of the Shattering Void tier, then unless one became a god, they wouldn't be able to advance any further, and staying in the vast lands would only be waiting for death. However, entering the immortal realm would be different. One would no longer be restricted by this heaven and earth, possessing a vast space for improvement. Ling Han nodded and said, it's indeed strange. Second brother, the sea race has many elites, and the number of Shattering Void tier elites is at least several times that of humans. Take care. Feng Peyun patted Ling Han's shoulder, speaking earnestly. Ling Han couldn't help but feel gloomy. He didn't want to do anything to Hellion Sun Shui, but this Hainyo herself wanted to stick to him. This girl was a high-level heaven tier elite, and staying by his side was equivalent to a time bomb. He couldn't sit still, but what could he do if he couldn't get rid of her? I'll go to the desolate north first. Feng Peyun stood up, took a step, and was instantly 1,000 miles away. Elites at the pinnacle of humanity were terrifyingly powerful as expected. Ling Han stared at Hellion Sun Shui, rolled his eyes and said, Hainyo, come, let's play a game called O's. How do we play? Hellion Sun Shui asked innocently. Raise your hands and say, no matter what happens in the future, you can't harm a single hair of mine. Ling Han started to give her a preventive injection. Although Feng Peyun left, those forces that threatened Ling Han before didn't dare to go back on their word, and sent their apologies that very night. Ling Han counted and discovered that there was another 300,000 origin crystals, and it was even a 3-star grade. This was the face of a Shattering Void tier elite. In a short time the 1,000 Corpse sect wouldn't come again, but to be able to make them take the risk of becoming the target of public criticism and lay down the 4th killing formation to kill all living things in the city, then how precious was the thing that the 1,000 Corpse sect was plotting? They definitely wouldn't give up just like that, and would definitely make a comeback. Everyone could guess that the thing that the 1,000 Corpse sect was looking for was definitely a supreme treasure. Thus, that very night, the city became extremely lively, and everyone played the game of finding treasures. The problem was, no one knew what the treasure that the 1,000 Corpse sect had their eyes on was, and even if they found it, they might miss it without knowing. However, secret treasures moved people's hearts, and the game of finding treasures not only didn't end, but instead became more and more intense. Some powerful forces didn't hesitate to buy property on a large scale, digging 3 feet into the ground to search. Ling Han was also very curious, but thinking that the treasure for the Thousand Corpse sect might not be useful for other martial artists. What did the Thousand Corpse sect want the most? First, superior raw materials for corpse soldiers. The corpses of elites, the stronger the better. Second, corpse chi, this was their source of power, and also the source of power for corpse soldiers. To say that the Thousand Corpse sect didn't hesitate to appear in public and lay down the 4th killing formation for a 10th tier spirit tool, Ling Han wouldn't believe it no matter what. Then, under Million Treasures City, either a large pile of shattering void tier corpses was buried, or there was a source of corpse chi hidden underground that could allow the Thousand Corpse sect's overall strength to skyrocket in a short period of time. Ling Han wasn't interested in either. At this moment, the 8 pavilion masters of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion and the 2 heaven-grade alchemists of the Alchemist Society finally returned, obviously empty-handed. Even Ling Han, the genuine alchemy emperor, didn't know where his previous life's possessions were, let alone others. When they returned, the competition of the 5 region Spirit Treasures Pavilions branches was also brought forward, and wasn't cancelled because of the Thousand Corpse sect's siege. Now that there was a shattering void tier elite keeping watch, Million Treasure City could be said to be stable, unless the Thousand Corpse sect could lay down the flawless 4th killing formation. However, if they could, wouldn't they have already laid it out and wouldn't need to go through the trouble twice? For the time being, Million Treasure City should have returned to normal, and as for when the Thousand Corpse sect would make a comeback, it was unclear. Ling Han cultivated in seclusion, and Feng Peyun left the rest of the monkey wine for him. Although taking it again didn't have as obvious of benefits as the first time, his cultivation had an obvious increase, and more importantly, he had a breakthrough on the path of the sword. The 20th flash of sword chi was about to be condensed. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 578. After crossing the barrier of 10 flashes of sword chi, Ling Han's journey was smooth, and he soon formed 9 flashes of sword chi, but these 20 flashes of sword chi was another barrier that stuck him for a long time. Feng Peyun treated Ling Han, his sworn brother, well, leaving behind the monkey wine with the intent of martial art that he specially sealed inside. When Ling Han drank it, the intent of martial art also circulated within his body, improving his comprehension of martial art in all aspects. This made Ling Han extremely shocked. Reaching the spiritual ocean tier, one could brand the intent of martial art on weapons, and after a long period of nourishment, it could become a spirit tool. After advancing into the flower blossom tier, one could brand the intent of martial art on special materials, turning them into spirit talismans. The spiritual infant tier was even more awesome, writing decrees that could suppress the world. Of course, deity transformation tier and heaven tier warriors could also write decrees that were more powerful. It wasn't that Ling Han didn't write decrees in his previous life, which were very convenient and could intimidate a region without having to do it himself. However, sealing the intent of martial art into the wine liquid could make people consume it and turn it into their own. Ling Han could only accept this method. When martial artists refined origin crystals, they could also leave behind a sliver of the intent of martial art, but compared to this it was far inferior. Feng Peyun was a sword master. The reason why he would leave the intent of martial art in the monkey wine was obviously because Ling Han used a sword, so he specially helped him. This intent of martial art was extremely pure, without a trace of impurities, and only supreme comprehension of sword arts. For Ling Han, this gift was truly priceless. In the first 5 days, Ling Han kept improving his cultivation. The monkey wine didn't increase his tier as crazily as the first time, but it still allowed him to improve 2 small tiers, reaching the 6th layer of the flower blossom tier. In the next 5 days, Ling Han was trying to figure out Feng Peyun's sword Dao, but he did not directly absorb it. Instead, he used it as a reference. If he directly absorbed it, with Feng Peyun's level in the way of the sword, it would be enough to take the initiative and affect Ling Han's own path. He could only follow Feng Peyun's path, but he had already chosen the path he wanted to walk, so he naturally had to jump out of this circle. Stones from other mountains can be used to improve jade. What Feng Peyun cultivated was the emotion sword, the pinnacle of emotion. He only loved one person in his life, and even if the other person died, his feelings would not change and his infatuation would not disappear. To be honest, Ling Han had no way of comprehending this kind of sword intent. It was true that he liked the heavenly phoenix divine maiden, but he definitely couldn't be as infatuated as Feng Peyun. He only extracted Feng Peyun's comprehension on the path of the sword. After all, this was the result of Feng Peyun's several hundred years of bitter cultivation on the path of the sword. Moreover, it was at the height of the shattering void tier, which had long surpassed the level of sword chi and sword ray, and reached the level of sword heart. With sword heart illuminated, even if one held a blade of grass, they could cut down the stars in the sky. Feng Peyun's sword heart shone in Ling Han's consciousness, and Ling Han used Feng Peyun's sword heart to illuminate his own heart, increasing his comprehension on the path of the sword and condensing sword chi. 5 days later, Ling Han flicked his right hand. Shwa shwa shwa, 19 flashes of sword chi slashed out, and the 20th flash of sword chi was hidden on his fingertip, yet it was hidden and didn't shoot out. A sprout had already sprouted. Ling Han continuously waved his fingers, and the 20th flash of sword chi became thicker and thicker, quickly taking shape. 20 flashes of sword chi is a threshold, and after crossing it the power would at least double. Ling Han nodded inwardly. Previously, when he fought with Shenyuan Ziguang, he felt immense pressure, mainly because the latter grasped more than 20 flashes of sword chi, forming a qualitative change. If I fight with that guy again now, I have a 50% chance of winning. It can't be helped. I can't use the mysterious 3000, and my strongest technique can't be used. Otherwise, one move would be enough to decide the outcome. While there's still time, I'll continue cultivating sword chi. Since I've crossed the great barrier of 20 flashes, I should be able to cultivate a few more flashes of sword chi in a short period of time. While Feng Peyun's sword heart was still there, Ling Han naturally couldn't waste it. This was an extremely rare opportunity, and even Feng Peyun might not be able to do it a few more times. Splitting his own sword heart and giving it to someone else was actually a kind of harm to himself. Ling Han couldn't help but feel rueful. This big brother of his was really a sentimental person. Just because he became sworn brothers with him, he generously bestowed him such an opportunity. In the future, he would definitely repay this big brother well. Another 3 days later, Feng Peyun's sword heart finally disappeared. Ling Han stopped, and with a wave of his right hand, 23 flashes of sword chi flashed past, frighteningly shocking. What a pity. If I had another month, I could push my sword chi to the limit of 29 flashes. However, is 29 flashes really the limit? Ling Han didn't know. This could only be found out after he himself advanced to this level. And the so-called limits were meant to be broken. For some people, 10 flashes was the limit, while for others 20 was the limit. He went out, and Zhu Xian'er immediately greeted him, saying, "Big brother Han, you finally came out of seclusion." Sister Hong was anxious to death. The competition is starting the day after tomorrow. Ling Han smiled and said, "Let her be anxious for a while. I haven't collected her appearance fee yet." Right? Zhu Xian'er took out a few stones the size of a human head from the spatial ring, with different colors: black, earthy yellow, and purple green. These are the star fragments that Big Brother Feng struck down. After the people in the city picked them up, they didn't dare to keep them for themselves, so I had someone give them to Big Brother Han for you to handle. Star meteorite gold. Ling Han was overjoyed. He picked up the few meteorites and examined them carefully, revealing a smile and said, "Blood rainbow iron dragon tooth gold scarlet cloud copperstone, haha, they're all 7th tier rare metals. Unfortunately, there aren't even 8th tier rare metals. Haha, one can't be too greedy. 7th tier rare metals are also not bad." Ling Han said to Zhu Xian'er, "You should also change to a sword. This is 7th tier rare metal, nourish it day and night, and brand it with your own martial art will, and in the future it can become a 7th tier spirit tool. Thank you, Big Brother Han." Zhu Xian'er said gently, looking at Ling Han lovingly, looking as if she was at his mercy. "Don't seduce Big Brother. Big Brother's willpower is very firm." Ling Han pinched her smooth jade-like chin, then brought her into the Black Tower. He wanted to refine those star metals into weapons. These could only be called iron ores, from purification to polishing and refining. Even if they were handed over to the most outstanding blacksmith, it would be impossible to complete without about half a year's time. After all, these were all 7th tier rare metals, so how hard were they? But inside the Black Tower, Everything became extremely simple. Ling Han was like a god, releasing 10th tier divine fire and easily melting the ores, refining away the impurities, and in less than half a day, he finished tempering. What kind of shape do you like? Ling Han asked Zhu Xian'er. Under Zhu Xian'er's continuous correction, Ling Han forged a sword with a slender blade, but extremely sharp. This still couldn't be considered a spirit tool, and needed to be continuously nourished with martial art will, but the grade of the tool embryo was there. Ling Han also forged one for himself, but his current brute force was too terrifying. This treasured sword that weighed over 50 kilograms was no different from an embroidery needle in his hand, completely unable to feel its weight. Next, Ling Han forged a bow and 10 sharp arrows for himself, but the bowstring had to be found elsewhere. And after finishing all this, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion's triennial competition was finally about to begin. Chapter 579. An Ice Dragon of the Shattering Void Tier. In theory, this ice dragon was invincible because it was formed from a formation, and as long as the formation was still there, it would be undying, so it was naturally invincible. However, it was precisely because it was formed from a formation that once the formation was broken, it would naturally dissipate, so it still had a weakness. Was a formation easy to break? Ling Han had Hellion Sun Shui attack the formation's eye with all her strength, while he controlled the ice dragon to not attack Hellion Sun Shui. Hellion Sun Shui attacked, and it was extremely terrifying. She had now raised her cultivation to the peak of the heaven tier, but that last step was too difficult to cross, making her unable to break through for a long time. This step might take 3 to 5 years, or it might take 30 to 50 years, 3 to 500 years, or it might even take a lifetime without being able to break through. There was a qualitative difference between the Shattering Void tier and the Heaven tier, and it was definitely not something that could be crossed with a bit of time. Even so, Hellion Sun Shui's attack was still extremely swift and fierce, and with one move, it seemed as if it could flatten the entire Imperial Palace. This wasn't impossible. Shattering Void tier elites could shake down the stars in the sky. So what was so strange about Heaven tier elites flattening an Imperial Palace? This strike smashed onto the formation, and instantly the entire formation was blasted back nearly 300 meters. However, the 108 formation eyes still maintained their original spacing, and the ice dragon was still there, coiled behind Ling Han, exuding a bone-chilling coldness. My full power attack actually couldn't destroy this formation. Hellion Sun Shui was shocked. One had to know that she cultivated both origin power and physical arts, and added with her own freakishness, although it still wasn't enough to break through the barrier of the Shattering Void tier, she was infinitely close to this level. Too shocking. Ling Han was also very satisfied. A 10th tier formation was a 10th tier formation, and even a Heaven tier's attack wouldn't break it. Let this lady. Yi Shuang appeared, looking eager to give it a try. Ling Han thought for a moment. Let's go up into the sky. I'm afraid you won't be able to control yourself and destroy my Imperial Palace. My totem has just formed. Above the Imperial Palace, there was the shadow of a black tower, very faint. It was precisely the Great Ling Empire's totem, but it had just formed. According to Yi Shuang, after condensing the power of the people's hearts, it could turn into a solid form and protect the country forever. If the country existed, the tower existed. If the country perished, the tower perished. The two of them rose into the sky. Ling Han still controlled the ice dragon and didn't move, allowing Yi Shuang to attack as she pleased. This was mainly the formation's defensive limit. First attack, battle prowess of 1 star of Shattering Void tier. Yi Shuang was also very cooperative. She raised a palm and struck at the formation, raising supreme might. If it weren't for the ice dragon blocking in front of Ling Han, he wouldn't be able to watch the battle at close range. The strength of the Shattering Void tier exceeded reason, making him vaguely worried. Even if he used Black Tower's power boost now, could he reach Shattering Void tier battle prowess? The palm struck, and the great formation was obviously sent flying several hundred meters away, but it was still maintained very well, and the ice dragon was still there. Second attack, Shattering Void tier 2 stars. Third attack, Shattering Void tier 3 stars. Until the fifth attack, this great formation finally collapsed, unable to bear the battle prowess of shattering void tier 5 stars, and the 108 formation eyes danced everywhere. This was the limit. Ling Han withdrew the formation eyes, set up the formation again, and said, "Then now try to see how many stars of shattering void tier battle prowess it can reach with the ice dragon." Yi Shuang directly welcomed it with battle prowess of shattering void tier 5 stars. The ice dragon launched a counterattack, and the sky instantly became icy cold. Even if heaven tier elites got too close, they'd be frozen into ice, and could only attack a few times from afar. Yi Shuang was suppressed and wasn't the ice dragon's match, but she immediately increased her battle prowess, increasing it star by star, shattering void tier 7 stars. Soon the limit of this great formation was tested, which could rival shattering void tier 7 stars of battle prowess. Because when Yi Shuang increased her battle prowess to 8 stars, the ice dragon was immediately suppressed, and not long after, this great formation was once again destroyed. Ling Han was very satisfied. Although there were many shattering void tier elites now, how many could surpass shattering void tier 7 stars battle prowess? According to Hellion Sun Shui, there were only 3 in the entire Hellion royal family. The freakishness of the sea race lay in the fact that they all had true dragon bloodline, and those with profound bloodline could summon true dragons at the heaven tier with the help of ancestral blood, thereby comprehending the profoundness of the shattering void tier, making breaking through this stage far easier than other heaven tier elites. However, after advancing into the shattering void tier, the power of bloodline was almost exhausted, and very few could reach the 5th layer of the shattering void tier or above. Most people died with only 2 or 3 stars of shattering void tier battle prowess. This time, even if the Xianyu royal family sent out shattering void tier elites, Ling Han wouldn't be afraid. The ice dragon ground blast formation was enough to deal with them. They wouldn't send out their strongest elites all at once, right? "Why are you willing to help me like this?" Ling Han asked Yi Shuang. "This lady has fallen in love with you, is this reason okay?" Yi Shuang said very casually. Ling Han laughed. It was really too fake, but he still said, "That's true, this young master is handsome and confident, and has amazing martial arts talent, so it's natural for me to be liked by millions of women." "Pay." Yi Shuang spat and said, "You're a frog at the bottom of a well, not knowing what freak is. I might as well tell you, in the divine realm, there are many who crossed into the shattering void tier at 20-something years old. Take this lady for example, 27 years old is shattering void tier." Ling Han made a ha sound, pointed at her, and said, "You finally admitted that you're from the divine realm." Yi Shuang raised her snow-white neck like a proud white swan, and said, "So what, bite me?" Ling Han sighed. How could this woman be such a ruffian, too much of a hoodlum? He was curious and said, "Then why don't you return to the divine realm, and why help me? Don't say you're a good person, I don't believe it." Yi Shuang's small mouth was half open, and after a while she said, "Why can't this lady be a good person? From head to toe, from inside to outside, you don't look like a good person in any way." Ling Han shook his head resolutely. "From inside to outside. TSK, damn brat, you're extremely bold in your lust. Speak, when did you peep at this lady?" Yi Shuang cracked her fingers, making pa sounds. All right, don't be so bored and don't change the topic," Ling Han said seriously. "Although having a powerful shattering void tier's help is awesome, I don't want to have an unstable factor by my side." Yi Shuang laughed mischievously, and said, saying that, "Aren't you afraid that this lady will make a move against you? You have to know that for a little guy like you, this lady can catch a snail with 3 fingers, and catch one accurately. If you wanted to make a move, you should have done it long ago. Why wait until now?" Ling Han said indifferently, "So I'd rather believe that you have other plans." Yi Shuang propped up her chin and said, "As a deity transformation tier, you're quite daring, clearly knowing this lady's identity and still daring to lay your cards on the table. All right, for the sake of your guts, this lady will tell you that I feel that you have a shocking secret on you, and want to squeeze it out." Chapter 580. Is there still a need to compete? Yinlu said indifferently, but she was extremely arrogant in her bones. In the alchemy competition he invited a low-level earth-grade alchemist, and in the martial art competition, He even invited the monster Xinyuan Ziguang. He himself majored in formations and had already become a 6th-tier formation master. No matter what, he should have a complete victory in this competition, adding an incomparably glorious stroke to his resume. Why not compete? Yin Hong crossed her arms, completely showing off her majestic figure, as if complaining that others didn't know her breasts were big. Who knows, that alchemist of yours might fail miserably in a simple task. That's right, alchemy is a meticulous work. One careless mistake and you might lose everything. Clan brother Lu is too complacent, Yin Hao said angrily. Then compete. Under the supervision of the clan's elders, the alchemy competition officially began. Actually, each family could send 3 alchemists to take the field and choose the one with the best results. Yin Lu was full of confidence and only sent Xian Jiyun, while Yin Hong obviously trusted Ling Han even more, and only sent one person as well. The other 3 clans used up all 3 slots, for fear of failure and added insurance. Furnace explosion during alchemy was an extremely common thing. Even heaven-grade alchemists like Kong Zishe and Nongbo Xian couldn't guarantee a 100% success rate, let alone others. There was only one chance in the alchemy competition, and if the furnace exploded, it was over. First, choose the medicinal ingredients and determine what medicinal pill to refine. This involved a very deep game. As mentioned before, no alchemist dared to pat their chest and say that they would definitely succeed in refining pills. The difference was that refining low-level medicinal pills was infinitely close to a 100% success rate, and the higher the medicinal pills grade, the closer it was to their own alchemy level, so the failure rate would skyrocket. Normally, when a low-level earth-grade alchemist refined a low-level earth-grade medicinal pill, the success rate was only about 30%, which was equivalent to refining 3 furnaces of medicinal pills, and only 1 furnace could succeed. Therefore, if Xian Jiyun chose to refine a low-grade earth-grade medicinal pill and succeeded, then the other alchemists would naturally be willing to admit defeat. But what if he failed? One should know that the probability of failure was as high as 60%. Once he failed, then it was nothing. Therefore, choosing the pill to refine wasn't just about one's own pill Dao level, but also how the opponent chose it. For a moment, though, the 10 alchemists were pacing back and forth in front of the medicine cabinets, and their medicine baskets were filled with many ingredients. Whether they were actually concocting this kind of alchemical pill or whether it was just a smokescreen, only they themselves knew. This was a battle of wits and courage. Only Ling Han didn't care at all. He directly chose the materials he wanted to refine. Unfortunately, there was not a single stock of heaven-level material in the medicine cabinet. True, heaven-grade ingredients were too precious, so how could they possibly be taken out? Everyone knew that there were only 3 heaven-grade alchemists in the whole world now, and if the Spirit Treasures Pavilion took out heaven-grade medicinal ingredients now, other than wasting them, what other use would it have? They're businessmen, not idiots. Forget it. Then let's refine a high-grade earth-grade one. Ling Han chose casually, not bothering to pay attention to others at all. Alchemy was just a formality for him. His goal was the martial arts tournament 6 days later, a showdown with Xinyuan Ziguang to see who was the strongest among the younger generation. He returned to his position and immediately opened the furnace to refine. Is this guy an idiot, starting to refine just like that? There's clearly 3 days, and the first day is definitely a battle of wits and pressure the opponent. It's best if he can make the opponent make a mistake and choose to refine a difficult pill, then the possibility of furnace explosion will be higher. Coming to the North region means he doesn't want to win. Last time he was at the bottom, and this time will probably be no exception. I reckon the first place this time is the South region. A low-grade earth-grade alchemist has a great psychological advantage. If he chooses to refine a high-grade black-grade medicinal pill, not only will his success rate greatly increase, he can also force others to choose to refine high-grade black-grade medicinal pill, and the possibility of his opponent's furnace explosion is extremely high. Yeah, Xinyuan Ziguang is also roped in by the South region, and in the martial art competition, he should be a sure first place. Yin Li's strength in formations is even more impressive, and even if he doesn't get first place, he'll be a sure second place. 2 first places plus 1 second place, that's definitely the champion this time. The big shots of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion all spoke one after another, but there were also a few who revealed pensive expressions, such as Yin Shuiyang, who was looking at Ling Han. being able to become sworn brothers with a shattering void tier elite. How could he be simple? Isn't that guy's technique amazing? Soon there were exclamations. Although the Spirit Treasures Pavilion didn't have its own alchemist, it always had an extremely good relationship with the Alchemist Society, and could often get alchemists to refine pills. Thus, even if they didn't know how to refine pills, they could still appreciate a bit. Ling Han's technique was definitely amazing, experienced and ruthless. Smooth. Done in one go. More and more people arrived, all revealing shocked expressions. This youngster was only 24 or 25 years old. How could his technique be so skilled? What medicinal pill is he refining? The material seems to be the 5 turns black jade pill. Isn't this a high-level earth-grade medicinal pill? What, this guy's crazy refining a high-level earth-grade medicinal pill? Yin Hong's mouth twitched, thinking that this guy not refining a heaven-grade medicinal pill was already giving them face, or else they'd be scared to death. Ling Han's technique was skilled and smooth, to the point that people couldn't help but feel a sense of beauty, as if it wasn't pill refining, but a master performing art. Too wonderful. After finishing the selection and purification of the materials, Ling Han began to refine the pill. He was now in the flower blossom tier, and refining a high-level earth-grade medicinal pill no longer required the help of strange fire. His own strength was enough. His figure moved, slapping palm after palm at the pill furnace. Flames rolled, and one after another, symbols shone brightly. This was drawing upon the essence of heaven and earth in the materials, perfectly interweaving the medicinal power. Phew! Unbelievable. This guy's technique is too experienced. Could there really be hope of forming a pill? From the looks of it, everything is going smoothly. There's going to be another alchemy genius in the world, already a high-level earth-grade alchemist in his 20s, then it's very possible that he'll advance into the ranks of heaven-grade in the future. Don't forget, this guy's talent in martial art isn't bad either. A freak. Ling Han was unmoved, and only focused on concocting the pill. After half a day, there were multiple wisps of dense qi floating above the alchemy furnace, which turned into the shapes of mountains and rivers, birds and beasts, which was incredibly wonderful. The pill is about to form. Everyone exclaimed. Xian Jiyun and the other alchemists were even more shocked by Ling Han. The difference of one level in alchemy was like the difference of a large tier in martial art. That was an absolute gap, not to mention that a high-level earth-grade alchemist was almost standing at the peak of alchemy, making them want to prostrate themselves in worship. Oh! Chapter 581. One day later, the 5 turns black jade pill was refined. Fortunately, this was only an earth-grade high-level medicinal pill, and it wouldn't attract a pill tribulation. However, because the quality was too high, it still triggered a response from heaven and earth. Thunderclouds rolled over, but there was no lightning. Ling Han slapped the lid of the cauldron forcefully. 222. 3 round alchemical pills flew out of the cauldron as if they had grown wings and were about to escape. From earth-grade medicinal pills were already psychic, and heaven-grade medicinal pills were more likely to take shape. Ordinary people couldn't see through that disguise at all. He casually tossed it and said, "Examine the pills." Examining the quality of a finished pill was naturally a trivial matter for the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, which was what they did. Immediately, 3 appraisers came on stage, examined carefully, and soon came to a conclusion. The 3 medicinal pills all reached 10-star quality, which could be said to be perfect. This was still Ling Han holding back, or else it wouldn't be a problem to reach 13-star or 14-star. First, well-deserved. Xian Jiyun and the others didn't choose materials anymore. What was there to refine? They all came over to worship Ling Han. Although this wasn't a heaven-grade alchemist being able to refine 10-star quality earth-grade high-level alchemist, how far was he from that sacred door? In front of such a future grandmaster, how could they have the courage to show their incompetence? No one thought that the alchemy competition would have such a result. Other than the North region obtaining 30 points, the other 4 branches didn't even get a single point. Then, as long as the North region obtained another 40 points in the next 2 competitions, they could secure first place, or at least tie for first place. Ling Han put away the 5 turns black jade pill, which belonged to the alchemist after being refined. It was clearly stated before. This was also why these alchemists were willing to come over. Using other people's materials to refine pills, the refined pills were their own. It was worth it. Especially earth-grade materials which were ridiculously expensive. He went straight back and entered the Black Tower again, continuing to study 10,000 techniques returned to one in bone text. The alchemy competition was 3 days, the formation competition was also 3 days, and finally the martial art competition. Therefore, Ling Han still had 5 days, and he was confident that he could attach the bone text to the false ray. He cultivated diligently, and 5 days later, he appeared from the Black Tower. Ling Han, you're bad. Hu Niu was greatly displeased. He hadn't played with the cute and beautiful Niu for a whole 5 days. Henin is bad. Helian Xuanxua also followed up, pouting her cherry lips so high that it made people want to kiss them. Ba, how could I have such a thought of being struck by lightning? What a sin! Ling Han shuddered and asked, how was the formation path competition? Sister Hong only got 3rd place, getting 10 points, Zhu Xian'er said from the side. Ling Han nodded very casually. He naturally did not care what ranking Hong could get in the end, but since he had participated in the competition with his personality, he would naturally strive to win with all his might. Xinyuan Ziguang, it was time for a battle to determine who was superior. Ling Han's fighting spirit was like fire. Xinyuan Ziguang was a young prodigy with real weight, perhaps not losing to the Sword Emperor and the others in his youth. In the previous life, although Ling Han stood at the peak of martial art, he could never be called an elite. In this life, he would step on all prodigies and ascend to the throne of the strongest. They set off and arrived at a massive training field. Xinyuan Ziguang, Pang Xiangming, and other young prodigies all appeared. There were a few that Ling Han didn't recognize, but they all emitted a shocking presence, worthy of being called a young king. Brother Pang. Ling Han greeted Pang Xiangming. Although the other was a bit effeminate, his personality was still quite straightforward, giving him a good impression. Brother Han. Pang Xiangming didn't dare to put on airs, returning a salute to Ling Han with cupped fists. However, cupping fists was fine, but he raised his thumb and middle finger, appearing very effeminate. Although Ling Han was also in the flower blossom tier like him, he already heard that Ling Han concocted a high-level earth-grade medicinal pill a few days ago. Then wouldn't he be a high-level earth-grade alchemist? He could be on equal footing with deity transformation tier elites. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, Brother Pang, after the competition, let's drink together. Of course. Pang Xiangming nodded hurriedly, looking like a flowering branch, making Ling Han somewhat unable to bear it. Did this guy reincarnate into the wrong body? Get ready to begin, Yin Shuiyang said. The competition uses a ring system. The first place of the previous competition will be the first to defend the ring, and the other 4 clans will each send someone to attack the ring. The winner will defend the ring. Whichever clan can defend the ring until the end will be the first place of this competition. The first place of the previous competition was the Middle States headquarters, so a young woman walked into the center of the field and directly flew into the sky, waiting for the challenge. Each clan could send 3 people to battle, so they obviously had to determine the vanguard and general candidates. No one would play their strongest card first. The second place of the previous competition was the first to attack the ring. A tall man walked out, and the battle immediately began. Soon the battle was decided, ending with the successful attack on the ring. Next, the South region attacked the ring. Ling Han yawned in boredom. The North region's branch could be said to have a strong army this time, with 3 super experts, Ling Han, Hu Niu, and Helian Sun Shui. Ling Han was afraid that the 2 girls would be too fierce and directly beat Xinyuan Ziguang down, so he asked for the vanguard position and soon entered the field. With his strength, how could the opponent be his match if they didn't use their general's trump card? Soon he won 8 matches in a row, forcing the generals of the other 4 clans to come out. Han Lin. I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. Xinyuan Ziguang entered the field, his imposing manner as if he was the son of a god. This time, I'll trample you under my feet and let you truly taste the taste of defeat. Sounds better than a song. Ling Han picked his ear. Now I'm really starting to doubt whether you're a martial artist or a drama actor. Xinyuan Ziguang was furious. You're the one with the glib tongue, not giving up until you anger people to death. And you actually had the nerve to say that in a battle between geniuses, psychological attacks were also an important part. He immediately suppressed his anger, not wanting to lose control at this time and give Ling Han a chance to take advantage of. Elites speak with their fists, he said coldly. Then why are you blabbering so much nonsense? Ling Han sneered. Why aren't you attacking? Xinyuan Ziguang stared at Ling Han, killing intent rising in his gaze, and said, For Lord Feng's sake, I'll be merciful and not beat you too badly. Ha! Ling Han shrugged and directly attacked. Don't think too highly of yourself. 6th layer of the flower blossom tier. Xinyuan Ziguang snorted. After not seeing each other for a few days, Ling Han's cultivation actually improved so quickly, shocking even him. However, he obviously wouldn't be afraid. He was confident that he could kill anyone in the same tier, not to mention that he had the advantage in tier. Kill! He raised his palms and welcomed Ling Han's attack. The two young king tiers finally clashed again, and this time no one would stop them. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 582. Ling Han's fists moved, and he struck out with the war elephant fist. Shockingly, there were 21 dragons and elephants roaring. This battle was bound to take a long time, so Ling Han wasn't in a hurry to succeed, and used his fiercest sword art. Xinyuan Ziguang was also very calm. Every palm and move conformed to the norm, neither hurried nor impatient, showing his excellent martial art cultivation. Just from this battle alone, everyone thought they were old friends, and now they were just exchanging pointers, without the slightest bit of anger. However, the two parties involved knew that they were testing each other. Although they'd fought twice before, they'd only exchanged a few simple moves, and neither side had used their trump cards. As they fought, both of their tempers flared up, and their attacks became swift and fierce. Xinyuan Ziguang's palm was like a heavy axe, and when it chopped down it could even collapse a mountain. The vein-like patterns weaved densely, and the will of martial art vibrated, already starting to show its might. When he struck out with his palm, 22 flashes of qi danced, its power astonishing. Ling Han wasn't outdone. Although his attainments in fist art weren't as good as his sword art, he'd also advanced into the level of 20 flashes of qi. And although he was slightly weaker in terms of cultivation level, adding the brute force brought by the 9 dragons tyrant body art, his power actually didn't lose out at all. Hong hong hong. The two of them kept exchanging blows without any fancy tricks. What they were competing in was power and comprehension of martial art, which was the quantity and quality of qi. This was the clash of blades. Whoever was slightly weaker could only swallow the bitter fruit of defeat. But the two of them were worthy of being geniuses of the present age, and actually fought to a draw. These two are so strong. In the younger generation, how many can stand shoulder to shoulder with them? Only Yao Huiyi, Lang Yitian, Dong Ling and a few others. The youngsters of this generation are really too strong, catching up to those geniuses in their prime. The martial art had entered a glorious golden age, and in Ling Han's generation, it was extremely dazzling. Geniuses seemed to have been knocked over and appeared like a spring. Humph, you're still not fit to be on par with me, Xinyuan Ziguang said coldly, and struck out with his palm again, yet only a fire tiger surged out. It was as large as a mountain, and emitted a shocking aura. He combined the 22 streams of qi into one and shot it out, which had a power close to that of radiance. Ling Han laughed and said, I forgot to thank you for teaching me this move. He also punched out, and a pale golden dragon elephant appeared, also as huge as a mountain. Upon closer inspection, regardless of whether it was the fire tiger or the dragon elephant, their bodies were all densely woven with vein-like patterns, emitting an astonishing divine light. Bam! The fire tiger and dragon elephant collided, bursting forth with a blazing light. This was the collision of martial arts willpower, turning into a divine sense shockwave that made many flower blossom tier cultivators shiver, their minds wavering under the two's martial arts willpower. The dragon elephant was even more ferocious, and with a roll of its long trunk, it actually rolled up the fire tiger and threw it away, charging towards Xinyuan Ziguang again. How is this possible? Xinyuan Ziguang cried out in shock. They both combined qi, and he had 22 flashes. He obviously had the advantage in quantity, so why was he still inferior to Ling Han? Could it be that in terms of qi quality, he was actually weaker than Ling Han? This was something he couldn't accept. He struck out with another palm, and only then did he dissolve Ling Han's attack. He couldn't help but look troubled. This result was too out of his expectations. That's not right. Xinyuan Ziguang immediately discovered that the opponent's dragon elephant was entwined with an extremely special vein-like pattern, like a divine light wrapping around it. It was precisely that vein-like pattern that greatly increased the dragon elephant's battle prowess. Figuring this out, he instantly recovered his confidence. It wasn't that he was inferior to Ling Han in terms of qi quality, but that Ling Han had grasped a secret art that could increase the power of qi. Xinyuan Ziguang definitely won't be weaker than anyone. He was full of heroism, and once again launched a fierce attack. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Then today I'll beat you into submission." He activated the Eye of Truth, and even the slightest of his opponent's flaws were magnified in his eyes. He rolled out, attacking fiercely without end. He had the body of Iron Sheet, and also cultivated the Nine Dragons' tyrant body art. Not only was his physique tyrannical, but his brute force was also astonishing, being most suited for close combat. If he were to be directly hit by his iron fists, and those 20 flashes of qi burst forth together, probably even a spiritual infant-tier cultivator wouldn't be able to withstand it. Xinyuan Ziguang knew that he was tyrannical in close combat, so how could he fight him head-on? He hurriedly moved his feet, doing his best to pull away from him. However, under Ling Han's Eye of Truth, his flaws were continuously magnified. Every step was traceable, allowing him to target and calculate his opponent's route in advance. He continuously intercepted Xinyuan Ziguang, creating a huge threat to him. Xinyuan Ziguang roared repeatedly. He'd never fought so vexed before, and this made him almost mad with anger. "You've angered me." Xinyuan Ziguang's black hair flew into the air, and his thick brows raised. He actually drew out a long saber with a flip of his hand. He was actually a saber user. Ling Han was astonished. Xinyuan Ziguang had always been bare-handed, and he'd thought that Xinyuan Ziguang was most proficient in palm arts. "To be able to force me to use a saber, you're not bad," Xinyuan Ziguang said proudly. With a saber in hand, he immediately recovered his calm, and his arrogance soared. "What's the difference?" Ling Han said with a smile. "Experience it yourself." Xinyuan Ziguang slashed out with his saber. 29 flashes of saber qi slashed out, slashing wildly at Ling Han. 29 flashes. Ling Han's expression froze, and he hurriedly used the demon fairy step, dodging these saber qi. Not only was the amount shocking, this saber was at least a 7th-tier spirit tool, and the saber qi it shot out was extremely sharp. Even if Ling Han's physique was equivalent to 6th-tier rare metal, he still didn't dare to take it head-on. 29 flashes of saber qi. Heavens, how could there be such a freak? I always thought he used palms, but never thought he was actually a saber user, and his talent in the way of the saber is actually so terrifying. Probably even the small saber king of the absolute saber sect is inferior to him. Everyone exclaimed, shocked by Xinyuan Ziguang's strength and talent. This young man really hit it deeply. Who would have thought that his true specialty was saber arts? Ling Han decisively drew his sword. With the purple demon sword in hand, his right hand shook, and 23 flashes of saber qi flew out. Another freak! Everyone exclaimed again. Pung, 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 sword qi and saber qi continuously collided, turning into countless fragments and exploding. This time Xinyuan Ziguang wasn't at a disadvantage. He had an absolute advantage in terms of the quantity of qi, and with the support of the treasured saber, the saber qi was even sharper, and its destructive power was even stronger. Saber slashes hell. Xinyuan Ziguang gave a long howl, and the treasured saber swept out. 29 flashes of saber qi merged into one, forming an incredibly thick and long saber ray, slashing towards Ling Han. Ling Han similarly slashed out with his sword. 23 flashes of sword qi merged into one, and with the support of bone patterns, it met the saber qi head-on. Chapter 583. In this desolate wilderness, a tea guest actually appeared, leisurely and contented. No matter how one looked at it, it was not normal. Ling Han and the others all stopped in their tracks and walked over to that person. This was a man as gentle as jade. He looked to be about 30 years old and was filled with the charm of a mature man. His head of black hair was scattered over his shoulders, and he looked a little wild and unrestrained. This person naturally arrived at Ling Han as well. He put down his teacup and said, "Tea is really a good thing. It can cultivate one's character, clear one's heart, and comprehend Tao." "Sir, you are sitting in the middle of the road. Are you planning to invite me to tea?" Ling Han asked with a smile and strode over. That man took out a cup from the tea tray, filled it up, and then said, "Why not?" Ling Han pulled out a chair, sat down, and faced that man. He raised the cup, took a sniff, and said, "It is indeed good tea." That man broke into a smile and said, "This is dragon birth tea. According to legends, it grows only after bathing in the rain of true dragons, and can only be picked once every 100 years. It is unknown whether it is the rain of true dragons, but its preciousness cannot be doubted." The fragrance of the tea overflowed in the mouth and lingered for a long time. "Thanks." Ling Han took a sip and could not help but relax his brows. He should also plant such good tea in the Black Tower. "Please enjoy." That man stretched out his hand and made a gesture of invitation. Ling Han took a few sips, put down the teacup, and said, "I have not asked for your distinguished name." That man smiled faintly and said, "I am called Corpse Boss." Ling Han almost sprayed out a mouthful of tea. He thought of many possibilities but just didn't connect this man with the Thousand Corpse sect. Whether it was Rong Huanxian, Corpse 2, or the Ninth Underworld King, they all carried corpse qi. But this cultured and refined man in front of him was like a well-read scholar, and it was really impossible to connect him with the Thousand Corpse sect. According to Corpse 2, Corpse Boss was even more perfect than him. This was truly perfect to the point that it didn't seem like a corpse reincarnating at all. That Corpse 2 could still feel the marks left behind by old age, but he truly cast off the old skin of his old body and obtained a new life. Truly unexpected. Ling Han said sincerely. Hearing the name Corpse Boss, no matter how one thought about it, this person should be scowling in anger and seething with killing intent, and was truly too different from this man in front of him. Corpse Boss smiled faintly and said, "I rarely kill people, but those who are worthy of me attacking, I'll invite them to tea." "Is this considered decapitation tea?" Ling Han asked. "You can say that." Corpse Boss nodded. "We can chat before we finish drinking." "Of course. Please. Please." The two of them didn't seem like enemies at all, chatting cheerfully and wittily. Corpse Boss was very knowledgeable, and no matter what topic they talked about, he could talk tirelessly, and Ling Han wasn't inferior in any way. He lived for over 200 years in his previous life, so he naturally read widely, and his wealth of knowledge was rarely matched by others. As they spoke and drank, the pot of tea was soon finished. After the two of them finished drinking the tea in their cups, they suddenly stopped talking. Corpse Boss slowly stored the teacup into the spatial spirit tool, while Ling Han stood up, allowing Corpse Boss to store the table and chair as well. "If you can block 10 moves from me, I'll spare you once," Corpse Boss said. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless. He couldn't see through Corpse Boss's cultivation at all, and according to what Corpse 2 said, Corpse Boss had always been cultivating in the pond of the underworld, and it was extremely likely that he would only come out of seclusion after reaching the Shattering Void tier. If this was a Shattering Void tier elite, then he'd really be able to strike the skies and break through the 9 underworlds, terrifyingly powerful. 10 moves, if he relied on his own battle prowess to withstand it, it would probably be extremely difficult. Ling Han unleashed the Revere Life Sword and was ready for battle. Corpse Boss very casually swatted a palm at Ling Han. Hong, the heaven and earth dimmed, and a large hand appeared out of thin air, pressing towards Ling Han. Without any fancy tricks, it was just an extremely ordinary palm. However, the power of this palm shockingly reached the peak stage of the heaven tier. Ling Han brandished his sword to meet it, but was immediately sent flying by the large hand, shaking his whole body violently and almost spitting out a mouthful of blood. It was extremely shocking. His physique had obviously reached the level of 9th tier rare metal, But his internal organs were still shaken under this one strike, as if rivers and seas were overturned, extremely uncomfortable. Second move. Corpse Boss waved another palm, and its power inconceivably increased by a large margin. Although it hadn't reached the level of the Shattering Void tier, it really wasn't too far off. This guy was definitely a Shattering Void tier existence. 10 moves to increase his battle prowess step by step, and the power of the third move would probably reach the level of the Shattering Void tier. Ling Han took another blow, and his whole body was slapped into a sheet of paper, becoming incredibly flat. However, he had managed to neutralize half of the might of such a terrifying blow. The remaining half was something that he could completely take on with his physique. Coupling toughness and gentleness, Corpse Boss revealed a look of surprise. I never thought that your physical arts had reached such a high level. However, this is only the second move. He waved his right hand again and delivered a third palm strike. This time it really reached the level of the Shattering Void tier. The heavens trembled and the earth cracked, groaning soundlessly under the battle prowess of the Shattering Void tier. Ling Han hesitated no longer, and waved his right hand, scattering out 108 short swords, forming the Ice Dragon Ground Blast formation. Pung! The large hand struck but was forcibly stopped. An ice dragon appeared blocking this palm strike. Corpse Boss looked surprised again. You're really surprising actually being a formation master. This person was just over 20 years old, but not only did he have astonishing accomplishments in martial arts, he also had the identity of a heaven-grade alchemist. Now he even unleashed a 10th tier formation which was truly inconceivable. How could a person possibly achieve such accomplishments? Corpse 2 said that you might be the reincarnation of some Shattering Void tier, possessing the soul of a previous life and being able to use the power of the realm. Which makes some sense, Corpse Boss said. There was a limit to one's strength, and even if Ling Han started studying these three arts from birth, 20 years' time wouldn't be able to reach the pinnacle of any one of them, let alone all three at once. Other than being a reincarnation of a Shattering Void tier, there was no second possibility. However, reincarnation and rebirth were unheard of, like him and Corpse 2. Although they still had bodies from several 100,000 years ago, their souls were completely unrelated to their previous bodies. Although the body was still this body, could it still be considered a continuation of the previous body? Soul reincarnation was inconceivable, and if this were to spread it would shock the whole world. Ling Han smiled faintly and said 7 more moves. Corpse Boss's expression was solemn, and he raised his right hand to his chest. A shocking light condensed on his palm, and vein-like patterns appeared, emitting an ancient presence. Was this his previous body's martial intent? Ling Han was somewhat gloomy. He clearly knew that his opponent was holding back a powerful move, but could only watch helplessly. He thought for a moment, and decided that he couldn't be so passive, unleashing Sunset Bow. Blocking 10 moves was blocking 10 moves, but it didn't say that he could only passively take a beating. Drawing the bow, knocking an arrow and activating the Eye of Truth, he searched for Corpse Boss flaw. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 584. Doesn't match your motherfucking sister. In Hong immediately jumped out. In Lu, you're a sore loser. Pa, you're a man, yet you don't have any breadth of mind. Do you want to lean on me? She pointed at her surging breasts. The female rogue's character was already out of control. In Hong, pay attention to your manners, a senior immediately reminded. Yes. In Hong turned around and bowed slightly, pretending to be a lady. In Lu said, martial arts competition is a competition of one's own strength. Xinyuan Ziguang relied on his own bloodline power. But this brat used medicinal pills. This is obviously unfair. Otherwise, if a polytier cultivator took a transcending origin pill, wouldn't he be able to kill even flower blossom tier cultivators? What's the point? Transcending origin pill, a legendary forbidden medicine, also known as transcendence pill. No matter who it was, as long as one ate one, they could immediately transcend mortality, surpass the flower blossom tier, and reach the level of the spiritual infant tier. Naturally, killing flower blossom tier cultivators would be as easy as pie, and when the medicinal effect wore off, the user would immediately die. as the body couldn't withstand the power of transcendence. However, this kind of medicinal pill only existed in legends. No one had ever truly refined it, let alone consumed it. Yinlu took out an example to explain that Chu Hao's action of consuming medicinal pills didn't conform to the rules of the martial arts competition. Instantly, many people discussed spiritedly, and quite a few nodded in agreement. Ling Han sneered and said, "Borrowing external power is indeed unfair. But don't forget, this 5 turns black jade pill was refined by me. Xinyuan Ziguang having the power of bloodline was his good luck. Can't I rely on my own efforts to make up for my battle prowess?" So reasonable. With that said, many people instantly leaned towards Ling Han again. However, these people's opinions weren't important. What was important was what the few big shots who had the power to decide said. After a while, Yin Shuiyang said, "Since Han Lin himself is an alchemist, he can reasonably consume medicinal pills. This battle Han Lin wins." Final verdict. Yin Hong was instantly overjoyed. She had originally thought that it was impossible for Ling Han to defeat Xinyuan Ziguang, but she never thought that this guy would actually give her such a huge surprise. On the other hand, Yin Li's face was gloomy. Although the results of this competition wouldn't directly decide the pavilion master, it still held a great weight. The key was that he'd originally thought that victory was within his grasp this time, and he'd invited Xian Jiyun and Xinyuan Ziguang at all costs, but he'd actually been defeated by a single person, which he couldn't accept. Master of both martial arts and alchemy. Was there such a monstrous person in the world? Yes, one had appeared in the North region previously, and his name was Ling Han. In the path of alchemy, he had even stepped onto the supreme path of a heaven-grade alchemist. Moreover, it was said that this person was quite talented in martial art, and had entered the secret realm to participate in the treasure hunt. Wait, are there that many geniuses like that? Han Lin and Ling Han read it backwards. Isn't it the same? Yinlu instantly came to a realization. Han Lin was Ling Han, and it was rumored that Ling Han had obtained the inheritance of the 12 palaces, and even knew the location of a divine treasure trove. Then it was understandable that he'd changed his name. You actually dared to ruin his plans, then you're also dead. Killing intent flashed in Yin Li's eyes. He decided to immediately spread the news that Han Lin was Ling Han. As for whether he'd guessed wrong or not, it didn't matter. It was enough as long as he could kill this brat. He didn't protest anymore. Since the big shot of the pavilion had already made a decision, protesting would only damage his image and reduce his points. After 3 rounds of competition, Yin Hong obtained a total of 80 points, firmly placing first. Ling Han returned to the side courtyard. Since he'd already helped Yin Hong, he naturally had to leave now to search for that boundless mountain and obtain the information that Zishuesian had left behind. However, he planned to delay for a few days. It wasn't that the new year had arrived, but rather that the Spirit Treasures Pavilion was about to hold an annual super auction. At that time, there would definitely be many precious treasures up for auction, which greatly interested Ling Han. In his hands, he currently had over 600,000 3-star origin crystals, which was enough for him to squander a little. But after the auction began, Ling Han discovered just how poor he was. Tycoons popped up one after another from who knows where, waving origin crystals and smashing them as if they weren't origin crystals at all, but just some rocks. Many of Ling Han's treasures were bought away just like that. In the end, he only managed to win one item: a flood dragon's tendon. The flood dragon had the bloodline of a true dragon, and after cultivating to the extreme, it could shed its snake body and transform into a true dragon. Because of that, this flood dragon's tendon was naturally incomparably precious, and only after spending almost all of Ling Han's savings did he manage to obtain it. It was also because the flood dragon's tendon couldn't be used as medicine, and could only be refined into a whip-shaped spirit tool. There were very few martial artists who used whips, so Ling Han was able to obtain it for close to 600,000 3-star origin crystals. Otherwise, it definitely wouldn't be so cheap. Ling Han obviously didn't want to make this flood dragon's tendon into a whip, but to use it as a bowstring. Once the auction ended, he wrapped the flood dragon's tendon around the bow, finally completing the creation of the bow. This was a 7th-tier rare metal paired with flood dragon's tendon, and an arrow made from 7th-tier rare metal could unleash its might from extremely far away. If a spiritual infant tier cultivator wasn't on guard, it was extremely possible that he'd be killed in one shot. Without circulating origin power, there wasn't much difference between spiritual infant tier and body refining tier in terms of defense. The attacker could concentrate his power on the arrow, but if the defender didn't know where the attack was coming from, he'd need to distribute origin power all over his body, or at a few vital points. In this way, it wouldn't be difficult for a flower blossom tier cultivator to break through a spiritual infant tier cultivator's defense. Ling Han was very satisfied and named this bow Sunset Bow. The arrow was obviously Sunset Arrow, which would be his powerful killing move in the future. Paired with the Eye of Truth, he could completely ambush from 100 miles away, and even a spiritual infant tier cultivator could die in confusion, not even knowing who the opponent was. Ling Han, Ling Han. Yin Hong ran over in a hurry. What, not calling me Master Ling? Aren't you a bit too quick to burn the bridge after crossing it? Ling Han said with a smile. Pei, you tricked my good sister into your hands, and still want me to call you Master. Yin Hong's face was full of disdain. Then her expression turned serious, and she said, I'll tell you a huge piece of news. From your mouth, the old Wang next door giving birth to a son is also a huge piece of news. Ling Han continued to tease. Then you don't have to hear it. I came to tell you out of goodwill, but you have this kind of attitude. AI really hurtful, I'll ignore you. Yin Hong made a move to leave. Wait, since you're already here, then say it, Ling Han said with a smile. You're really casual. Men that are too casual aren't reliable. I say, Sister Xianer, what's so good about this kind of man? Why not follow me? Aren't we just missing a penis? Without that thing we really can't live on, Yin Hong said very roguishly, but it made Zhu Xianer's pretty face flush, and she threw herself into Ling Han's arms, not daring to be with this female rogue. Helian Sun Shui, however, was curious and asked, missing what penis? Niu also wants to know. Hu Niu didn't want to be left out. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 585. Don't listen to this female pervert's nonsense. Ling Han pointed at Yin Hong and said, in the future, don't treat her as a woman, but as a man reincarnated into the wrong body, possessing a female body. So, if she approaches you, you have to imagine it as a man approaching you, understand? Helian Sun Shui and Hu Niu instantly revealed an ominous glint. A stinky man wanted to approach them? You're brainwashing. Yin Hong pointed out. As expected of a master, you're really full of tricks. No wonder so many little girls were tricked by you. Less nonsense, what's that message? Ling Han asked. Yin Hong finally said seriously, Heaven's Sword Sect, Cloud Phoenix Sect, Absolute Saber Sect, Blue Thunder Sect, and Earth Dragon Sect. The 5 great sects jointly announced that they will establish the Restore Heaven Academy to recruit all geniuses in the world. Oh. Ling Han was puzzled. The 5 great sects had been passed down since ancient times, and were the only 5 forces that had been passed down since ancient times. Each had a long history, so why would they jointly establish some Restore Heaven Academy now? Did they say why? He asked. The 5 great sects jointly announced that the world will be in great chaos soon, possibly leading to a break in the whole of martial art. Thus, the 5 great sects will select as many outstanding geniuses as possible to nurture. If there really is a great calamity, they can also leave behind the seeds of revival, Yin Hong said. This reason is quite lofty, Ling Han mumbled. Master Ling, are you interested in going? Yin Hong asked. Ling Han thought and said, where is this Restore Heaven Academy? 9 Dragon Mountain. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind. This 9 Dragon Mountain was in Flying Flower County, and the boundless mountain that Zishuesian left behind the message should also be in Flying Flower County. What a coincidence. Since he was going to Flying Flower County, there was no harm in going along the way. After all, the 5 great sects had existed for who knew how many millennia, and possessed the most complete inheritance of martial art. Going there to study should be somewhat beneficial. Although Ling Han obtained many secret arts in his previous life, how could one person's power compare to the accumulation of countless generations? If all the monstrous geniuses in the world are gathered here, I will be looking forward to it, said Ling Han with a smile. I knew you'd be interested. However, Not everyone can enter this Restore Heaven Academy. The 5 great sects will first issue notices to some geniuses, allowing them to directly enter the academy. As for the remaining people, they'll have to pass through layers of screening, Ing Hong continued. I see. Ling Han smiled and said, I wonder if anyone sent me a notice. Yo, Grandmaster Ling, are you jealous? Ing Hong laughed loudly. Let me tell you a piece of unfortunate news. Xinyuan Ziguang has already received the notice, and will set off this morning. As for you, you haven't made any movements at all. Ling Han was puzzled and said, in terms of martial art level, I'm at least not inferior to Xinyuan Ziguang. And in terms of alchemy ability, I'm even a high-level Earth-grade alchemist, so why did they skip over me? He wasn't placing too much importance on this admission quota. He simply couldn't understand. Grandmaster Ling, you're too full of yourself. Ing Hong shook her head with a smile. The 5 great sects must have planned for the establishment of the Restore Heaven Academy long ago, and have already confirmed a batch of geniuses that can enter the academy, such as Yao Huiyu, Small Saber King, Dong Ling and the others. As for you, how long has it been since you appeared? It was indeed so. Only 3 days had passed since Ling Han defeated Xinyuan Ziguang, and Million Treasure City had been sealed off by the 4th Great Formation, so no news could have possibly spread. Ling Han laughed heartily. He had indeed taken things for granted. After Ing Hong left, Ling Han couldn't help but ponder. In the memory stone that Zi Shuexian left behind, 10,000 years ago, someone from the divine realm should have come and destroyed the inheritance of the previous generation's martial art. And according to the news of later generations, it was the Heaven Sword sect and the other 4 great sects that joined forces to turn the tide and drive away those invaders. Ling Han once went to an ancient battlefield in Rain Country, where at least a few hundred Heaven-tier elites joined forces to attack a Shattering Void-tier cultivator, leaving behind countless corpses. Now that Shattering Void-tier cultivator might not be a Shattering Void-tier cultivator, but could be a divine being whose tier was suppressed by this realm. However, Zi Shuexian said that all of this could be a lie. Now 10,000 years had passed, and the 5 great sects opened the Restore Heaven Academy, saying that the world was extremely likely to be in chaos. Could it be that the divine realm was going to descend and invade again? Ma Duobao once said that he wanted to split open the sky and bring a piece of heaven and earth directly into the divine realm, allowing even the fowls and dogs to ascend to heaven. Did he also foresee this great chaos? Also, Feng Peyun said that he didn't dare to rashly break open the void, and that there would be a great disaster. Could it also be related to the divine realm? Ling Han thought until his head swelled. He knew a lot of things now, but he couldn't understand more and more. Why did the divine realm want to invade the vast lands? What was there that was worth the divine realm coveting? Moreover, if the divine realm really wanted to destroy the vast lands, could the 5 great sects really be able to stop them? If several thousand or tens of thousands of divine beings came, even if they were all suppressed to the Shattering Void tier, wouldn't that still be enough to sweep them away? Ling Han couldn't understand no matter how much he thought about it. If it really was an invasion by divine beings, then what ability did the 5 great sects have to drive out the foreign races and return their lands? Could it really be as Zi Shuexian said, that everything was a lie? He could only find out if he found Zi Shuexian's message. This trip to the Heaven Mending Academy was something he had to do. Ling Han had nothing to worry about anyway, so once he made up his mind, he decided to immediately set out. Zhu Erxian and the other 2 girls obviously wouldn't object. After bidding farewell to Yin Hong, they set out on their journey. Ling Han originally wanted to meet Kong Zisher. This was very likely a descendant left behind by his disciple, but he was a heaven-grade alchemist now, after all. His days were very comfortable, and there was no need for him to worry. Moreover, if he said he was the ancestor of the Kong family, he'd definitely be rolled his eyes, right? Forget it, he'd think about it later. The only thing that left Ling Han with regret was that he still didn't know what the treasure that the Thousand Corpse sect was scheming for when they attacked Million Treasure City was. Although it might not be useful to him, once a person's curiosity arose, he would always keep it in mind. The 4 of them set out, heading towards Flying Blossom County. They hired a carriage, and Ling Han naturally returned to his original appearance. Always wearing a face that was disguised made him uncomfortable, too. After arriving at the Restore Heaven Academy, he could disguise himself as another person, and Han Lin's identity was very likely already exposed. After all, the two people's names were so similar, and they both cultivated both martial arts and alchemy. Their achievements were frighteningly high, and it was extremely easy for people to associate them together. In the Black Tower, Ling Han played with the Sunset Bow. The Flood Dragon's tendons were indeed tough. Not to mention Flower Blossom Tier Warriors, even Heaven Tier Warriors might not be able to use this bow. If one didn't cultivate physical arts, drawing the bow would consume a large amount of origin power, and how would one be able to concentrate the excess origin power on the arrow to deliver a fatal blow? Unlike weapons like swords, sabers, and spears, even if forged with rare metal, they wouldn't weigh more than 50 kilograms. Who didn't have this bit of strength? But to draw the sunset bow, what kind of strength was needed to lift up a mountain? Cell phones were more refreshing to read. Chapter 586. It's quite useful to have a strong physique. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh ruefully. Otherwise, he'd have to expend a large amount of origin power on drawing the bow, and when he used Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, its power would definitely be much weaker. I wonder if Sword Emperor and the others cultivated physical arts. He was suddenly curious. Drawing the bow and shooting the arrow, the sunset arrow shot out. At first, it could still be seen with the naked eye, but after shooting for a few miles, it accelerated to a terrifying degree. Truly like a stream of light, traveling 100 miles in an instant. Extremely far away. A target set up by Ling Han was instantly shot by the sunset arrow, turning into shattered rocks that filled the sky. The maximum range is 300 miles. Any further and the power will start to weaken, and the speed will also start to decrease. Ling Han said to himself. However, from shooting to the maximum range of 300 miles, it only needs 1/100th of a heartbeat, so fast that even the naked eye can't catch it. After advancing into the Flower Blossom tier, there'll be warning signs when encountering danger, but these warning signs won't tell you where the attack is coming from, or what kind of attack it is. Taking myself as an example, if I didn't have the Black Tower, the first reaction would definitely be to condense poly power and set up defenses all over my body. However, under the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow, even the defense of a spiritual infant tier elite can be penetrated. If origin power is spread all over the body, and not concentrated on a few vital points, how could a defense that was divided into several parts be able to block the Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow? This also reminds me that I'm not the only person in the world who knows archery, and some spirit tools can have similar effects. Thus, if I encounter such a situation, hiding in the Black Tower is obviously foolproof, but sometimes I'm not allowed to enter the Black Tower, so I can only spread origin power on various vital points and can't have the extravagant hope of escaping unscathed, or else it'll be seeking death. Fortunately, I've cultivated Body of Iron Sheet, and ordinary people can't threaten me. If I cultivate Indestructible Body of Diamond, I believe that even a spiritual infant tier warrior using Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow can't hurt me. Ling Han concluded. The Annihilating Dragon Star Arrow combined with a precious artifact like the Sunset Bow, in addition to the Eye of Truth, had become his greatest killing move. It could easily take someone's life from 100 miles away. There are too few arrows. I have to forge some more. It's just that 7th tier rare metal is too precious. Where can I get so many? He suddenly felt a strange movement. The carriage had been ambushed, and in an instant the carriage exploded. The 2 coachmen were also killed. Dust flew everywhere, and 3 masked elders appeared, giving off a terrifying aura. Where is he? An elder asked. Could it be that it's a diversion, purposefully moving out in the open to attract our attention, but in reality it's another path? The second elder said. What a meticulous mind, said the third elder. Although Han Lin might not be Ling Han, this matter involves the inheritance and divine treasures of the 12 palaces. We can't let him go even if he's wrong, said the first elder. Yes. The other 2 elders nodded. Let's go. The 3 leaped up and walked back. Ling Han exited the Black Tower. From what the 3 revealed, they'd already seen through his disguise, but they still couldn't be completely sure. These 3 were truly vicious and merciless. In the situation where they weren't sure of his identity, they still suddenly attacked to kill, truly ruthless. The spiritual infant tear? He glanced at the two coachmen who died violently, and a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Without hesitation, he took out the sunset bow, nocked an arrow and activated the Eye of Truth. The three elders who'd already gone far away instantly appeared before his eyes. Brute force erupted and Ling Han drew the bow. The flood dragon tendons tightened, and the muscles on Ling Han's arms bulged high, feeling full of power. He'd already activated the annihilating dragon star arrow, and the arrow forged from 7th tier rare metal instantly weaved densely with vein-like patterns. One after another, simple and unadorned vein-like patterns appeared, and the entire arrow seemed to come alive. Go! Ling Han shouted lightly, and loosened the 5 fingers on his right hand. Instantly, the arrow turned into a stream of light and shot out. He immediately took out a second arrow, drew the bow again and shot again. He drew the bow 3 times and shot 3 arrows consecutively. Instantly he staggered and his face turned pale. Shooting 3 arrows consecutively in a short period of time exhausted him greatly. 100 miles away, the 3 elders stopped at the same time. A strong warning rose up in their hearts, and under the urging of their instincts, they all condensed their origin power, forming a shield in front of them. Xiao, a stream of light attacked, swiftly shooting towards the elder in the middle. The 3 practically didn't even have time to react, and the stream of light had already shot to the left side of the elder's chest. It turned into a sharp arrow, its whole body twined with divine light and densely woven vein-like patterns. Without any suspense, the origin power shield couldn't block it at all. With the star dragon star arrow's vein-like patterns, in addition to the fact that it was itself made from 7th tier rare metal, its destructive power was really too terrifying, and it easily pierced through the origin power shield. Once the shield was broken, the elder's body was naturally too weak to withstand a single blow. Blood splattered, and this arrow had already sunk into the elder's chest. It then pierced out from his back, and once again broke through the origin power shield. Only then did the arrow's power almost deplete, and it stabbed into the ground. The elder's eyes instantly lost their luster, and he suddenly knelt down. His figure swayed slightly, and he fell head first onto the ground. 1 arrow to kill 7th brother. The other 2 elders exclaimed, but before they could do anything, the second stream of light had already arrived. With the previous example, they obviously didn't dare to disperse their origin power for defense, and instead spread it on a few vital points. A streak of blood splattered, and the second elder was also shot. Fortunately, because he only spread his origin power on the vital points, although it still wasn't concentrated in one place, the defensive power still increased many times. Chapter 587. Nonsense. The Heaven Tier reprimanded. The rules set by our ancestors have all been weathered by wind and rain for millions of years, so they are naturally the truth. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Are you stupid? What rules set by our ancestors? Those are obviously set by the strong. I'm strong so I can speak. This is the truth that will never change for tens of thousands of years. Since that's the case, I'll beat you into submission." The Heaven Tier took large strides, his essence, chi, and spirit bursting forth like a blazing furnace. Ling Han smiled and said, "Then I'll use you as a chicken, and kill you for these monkeys." Impudence. The Heaven Tier was furious. He was an elite of the Heaven Tier, a supreme existence in the East region, and now he was actually mocked as a chicken. How could he not be furious? He humphed and drew out a long cyan whip. With a shake, this whip immediately straightened like a long spear. Elder Zhang is angry, and is going to fight for real. That's only natural. Elder Zhang is a well-known figure in our East region, and among the 10 strongest, he can be ranked in the top 5. This brat actually dares to insult Elder Zhang. He's completely courting death. The elites of the East region were all discussing spiritedly. They naturally thought that Ling Han was dead for sure. The elite of the Heaven Tier was surnamed Tan, and his given name was Zhang, but no one dared to call him directly by his name, and all referred to him as Elder Zhang. Jia Zhang was one of the leaders of the elites of the East region this time. His move this time could be considered a battle between kings, the strongest battle between the two sides. Of course, in the eyes of the elites of the East region, there was no suspense in this battle. It was definitely Jia Zhang's complete victory. Ling Han extended his right hand and said indifferently, "I'll give you a handicap of one hand." Fuck. Flames immediately danced on top of Jia Zhang's head. For an elite that had reached his level, even if he didn't cultivate fire element arts, he could still draw upon the spiritual chi of heaven and earth with a single thought and turn it into flames. He was obviously furious. A mere junior in the deity transformation tier, so what if he had shocking talent? He actually said he would give him a handicap of one hand, causing his eyes to spit fire from anger. This junior really didn't know the difference between life and death. He brandished his whip spear and attacked Ling Han. Ling Han hadn't seen this kind of weapon and couldn't help but feel curious. He shifted his feet, wondering what was so outstanding about this technique. Needless to say, this spirit tool was really quite extraordinary. It could be used as a spear thrust, but after it was blocked, it could turn into the softness of a whip, forming a lashing attack. Patterns were also branded on it, and after being activated it emitted a faint blue light, its power astonishing. Being able to rank among the strongest in the East region, he obviously wasn't boasting. Unfortunately, he was facing Ling Han. "My physique is comparable to 9th tier rare metal, so how can you injure me? Even if you use strange fire to melt it, it wouldn't be something that can be done in a short period of time. At least a few days and nights would be needed to refine it." Although Jia Zhang was fighting fiercely and seemed to have the upper hand on the battlefield, suppressing Ling Han, in reality, he wasn't a threat to Ling Han at all. It was only because Ling Han was thinking about the changes of this whip spear that he didn't retaliate from beginning to end. "Elder Zhang, eliminate this extremely audacious guy. That's right, kill this brat, and we can return to the East region. The spiritual chi in this place is too thin, and staying here for one more day is one more day of loss." Everyone called out one after another, hoping to quickly finish off the errand of eliminating Ling Han, so that they could return to the East region as soon as possible. Jia Zhang naturally wanted to deal with Ling Han, but he understood in his heart that Ling Han seemed to be at a complete disadvantage, yet was extremely calm, and definitely wasn't someone he could defeat in a short period of time. He couldn't help but goad Ling Han Jr., "Just how long do you want to hide here and there? Behind you is the Imperial City, so where can you hide?" Ling Han just so happened to be tired of playing, and said with a smile, "You want to be defeated so badly? Fine, I'll fulfill your wish." He stretched out his right hand and instantly golden light shone. He had already activated the Earth Overturning Seal, pressing towards his opponent. This was a mystical power. Ling Han had long since cultivated the Earth Overturning Seal to the point that he could use it with both hands and use it with one hand. Thus, even if he only used his right hand now, his battle prowess was only slightly weakened. He instantly switched from defense to offense, and instantly took the initiative in the situation and momentum. These days, the heaven tier elites he encountered were all like Sushio Ran and Corpse 2, which made him feel that heaven tier elites were very strong. But now that it was Jia Zhang, he instantly had a feeling that heaven tier elites were very weak. Jia Zhang could be called a supreme elite in the East region, but how could he compare to Sushio Ran and the others? What? Elder Zhang was actually suppressed. How is this possible? Oh my god, this must be fake. All the East region's elites held their heads and cried out in shock. This was too fake. A junior in the deity transformation tier could actually suppress a heaven tier elite, and that was even a veteran heaven tier elite that had been famous for a long time. Their outlook on life was about to collapse. Another heaven tier elite snorted and said, "It's not a one-on-one fight now. Our mission is to annihilate the Great Ling dynasty, and now the king is in front of us. Brother Tu, Brother Ma, Brother Zhang, attack with this old man and eliminate this junior." Okay. The other heaven tier elites nodded one after another. Indeed, this wasn't a martial arts contest, and there was no need to talk about any one-on-one rules. A total of 7 heaven tier elites walked out together and surrounded Ling Han. Nyo instantly jumped out and said, "Nyo will play with you guys." Ling Han smiled and said, "No need, I'll deal with them." Since these people came at him together, He didn't have to keep his promise of using only one hand. He immediately unleashed the Revere Life Sword, and with a shake sword light soared into the skies. With the supportive power of the nation, he used the mysterious 3000. Instantly, 3,100 flashes of sword light burst forth, enveloping the 8 great heaven-tier elites at the same time. What? Jia Zhang and the others were so shocked that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. How could there possibly be such a swift and fierce sword technique in this world, attacking 8 great heaven-tier elites at the same time, and making everyone feel an irresistible sense of helplessness? This realization was already too late. The sword light streaked past, and the 8 great heaven-tier elites all fell down, instantly dead. In the camp of the elites of the East region, there was only dead silence left. How could they resist? They couldn't resist at all. Ling Han withdrew his sword, and said indifferently, "How is it? Is there anyone else who wants to surrender, or stubbornly resist to the end?" The heaven-tier elites of the East region had all died in battle, and the ones left were only in the deity transformation tier. Facing Ling Han, who was like a god, they could no longer summon the slightest bit of desire to fight. Some people surrendered on the spot, but there were also some who chose to flee. They didn't want to become someone else's servant. Hunyao showed her might, her body turning into lightning. Every grab was accurate, and who could escape from her hands? After luring the enemy deep in, she closed the door and beat the dogs. The East expedition troops of the East region were declared completely annihilated. Ling Han summoned all of them to surrender. In the face of death, very few people could face death with equanimity. Moreover, they were also ordered to attack, and had no irreconcilable hatred with Ling Han, so why should they fight to the death? Could it really be that the middle state would confer upon them the title of martyr? Chapter 588. After some consideration, Ling Han finally gave up on this tempting plan. After all, Yinla hid in the Spirit Treasures Pavilion with Heaven Tier, or even Shattering Void Tier elites overseeing, so killing her was too difficult. He'd kill her later, since she was just a small character. Ling Han didn't hire another carriage, and just walked through the mountain forest with the 3 girls. With beauties as his company, he would tease Yu Xian'er, the beautiful fairy, from time to time, and be teased by Helian Sun Shui, the adorable girl, and fight over meat with Hunyao. His days were actually very comfortable. 7 days later, a vast body of water appeared in front of them. This wasn't an ocean, but an inland lake that was even vaster than the ocean, named Yangzhong Lake. Crossing with a boat would be too slow, so Ling Han and the others walked on the waves. With their strength, even the weak tension of the lake water was enough for them to borrow strength as if they were walking on flat ground. However, walking on water was different from running on ground after all, and after a day they were unbearably tired. When night came, they found an island to rest, eat and drink to their heart's content, and after a good night's sleep, they continued on the next day. This inland lake was indeed ridiculously large. After 3 days they still hadn't walked out, and according to the map, they'd only walked half the distance. Ahead a dense fog suddenly appeared, a vast expanse of whiteness. Legend has it that there's a 1,000-year-old flood dragon here that breathes mist every day, forming a source of mist on the lake. I don't know if it's true or not. Ling Han stopped, and didn't immediately enter the range of the mist. Niu wants to eat flood dragon meat. Hunyao immediately clapped her hands and shouted. Being able to live for 1,000 years, this flood dragon at least advanced into heaven tier. Let's not give it rations, Ling Han said with a smile. Hunyao pouted, appearing very pitiful. She hadn't eaten flood dragon meat yet. However, we have a true dragon descendant here, who might be able to deter that flood dragon, Ling Han said. Who? Helian Sun Shui asked very curiously. Ling Han and the others all looked towards her. Of course it's you. Helian Shunshui pointed at herself, shook her head repeatedly, and said, I am a human, not a monster. Let's go. If we encounter that flood dragon, we'll hide and let this sea girl deal with it. Ling Han smiled and said to Helian Shunshui, hold the brick well. If anything comes out to ambush us later, smash it. And Helian Shunshui nodded forcefully. She didn't know the level of martial art at all. Otherwise, if she knew that there might be a heaven-tier flood dragon here, and she thought that she didn't even have the strength to truss a chicken, she would definitely be so scared that she would directly close her eyes. The four of them walked forward. There was a strong fishy smell in the fog, which made people want to vomit. No wonder people guessed that there was a flood dragon here. From the fishy smell, there was definitely a big guy here. Ung! A muffled sound rang out, and the surface of the lake immediately began to ripple, forming a furious tide. A 30-meter-tall wave slammed towards Ling Han's group of four. They hurriedly flew up and dodged this furious wave. Hong! The wave rolled over, but immediately, another wave rose up and heavily smashed over. After at least a few dozen waves crashed over, the surface of the water calmed down. Did that big guy yawn? Ling Han asked in surprise. It was really hard to imagine what kind of gigantic body this lake monster had. It was merely a yawn, yet it caused such a huge commotion. Be careful, Zhu Xian'er warned. They advanced carefully but didn't discover anything, mainly because this fog was a bit strange, greatly affecting their vision. As they walked, a colossus suddenly appeared in front of them. The four of them thought that they'd encountered that big guy. But when they looked again, it wasn't right because it wasn't a beast but a ship. Such a large ship, completely black like a black dragon. This inland lake was so large that there were naturally merchant ships coming and going, but this definitely wasn't a merchant ship, because there was a statue of a skeleton at the bow, emitting a malevolent aura. In the fog, the entire length of the giant ship was finally revealed. It was 300 meters long, but only 30 meters wide, so it gave people a feeling like a snake or a dragon. Yo, your luck isn't bad, actually encountering two big beauties. Boss, there's also a little beauty. Pay, you damn pervert, such a small girl is pleasing to your eyes. I'm ashamed to be associated with you. Two people appeared on the bow, both men in their 40s. One was tall and the other was short and skinny, just the two extremes. However, what was unacceptable was that the short and skinny one was the boss, while the tall one's face was full of vulgarity, and his eyeballs were slippery. There was no tall image to speak of. The short and skinny man stared at Ling Han and said, "Little brother, why don't you come join us? This big brother likes to help others, so how about I give you a ride?" Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "We don't seem to be going the same way. I appreciate your kindness, but you can go your own way, and I'll go mine." The short and skinny man's expression immediately darkened, and he said, "Are you rejecting me? I hate being rejected the most." Not good, the boss is going to get angry. The tall man hastily hugged his head and cried out in alarm, appearing incomparably panicked. This act was really well done. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. How will he get angry? I'm looking forward to it. When our boss gets angry, blood will cover the mountains and rivers, and all life will die, said the tall man. Brat, I advise you to quickly surrender. Don't provoke our boss. Too late. The skinny man roared, "Little ones, go kill that brat and snatch those two beauties." And the little one, I like her, said the tall man hastily. Shio 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 shio, several hundred men instantly jumped down from the black ship, all wearing black armor that flashed with a strange light. Ling Han made a slight sound of surprise, stared at those armors and said, "Hu Niu Xian'er, you guys go?" Zhu Xian'er answered gently, and Hu Niu roared, already charging up. Helian Sun Shui naturally stayed behind Ling Han obediently, nervously raising the brick, looking like she'd smash whoever dared to come over. Pong, 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 Hu Niu unleashed her invincible might, kicking those black-armored men as if they were made of straw, flying all over the sky. Her advancement wasn't slow at all, also reaching the high level of the flower blossom tier. Added with her freakishness, her battle prowess was obviously terrifying. But strangely, under her claws, these people's armors actually didn't shatter. Zhu Xian'er immediately realized something was off. The opponents were all very weak, most of them at the spiritual ocean tier, and only a few were at the spiritual pedestal tier. Logically, they should be easily suppressed by her, a peak stage spiritual pedestal tier warrior. However, when she slashed with the 100-ray sword, she couldn't tear apart these people's armors at all. The 100-ray sword was the new sword that Ling Han forged for her, forged with 7th tier rare metal. Although it hadn't become a spirit tool yet in terms of sharpness, it wasn't inferior at all. Strange, truly strange. The defensive power of these people's armors was too shocking. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 589. A chaotic battle ensued. Zhu Xian'er and Hu Niu had the absolute upper hand in terms of cultivation level, but the armor on their opponents was extremely strange. Sharp weapons were difficult to damage, and even Hu Niu's claws couldn't cut through it. Thus, although these people were hit by the heavy power to the point of vomiting blood, not a single one of them died. Hu Niu was furious. She leaped over and bit fiercely at one of the men's armor. With a crack, she actually managed to bite off a piece of armor, fully showing how terrifying her teeth were. Monsters! The pirates all cried out in shock. In their minds, these armors were indestructible. At least, none of the enemies they had met before had been able to break through them. At least, none of the enemies they encountered before could destroy this layer of protection. Zhu Xian'er also changed tactics, only using the 100-ray sword to parry, while her left hand turned into a palm and struck at these people's chests, wanting to use palm power to penetrate the armor and directly kill them with tyrannical power. However, she never expected that these armors actually had the effect of absorbing power. She was obviously at the peak of the spiritual pedestal tier, but the destructive power of her palm strike was sharply reduced to the level of the spiritual ocean tier, and could only lightly injure some pirates. Interesting, interesting. Ling Han kept nodding. These people's armors really broadened his horizons. However, these armors were only armors, not spirit tools that could be activated to form a shield. Thus, Zhu Xian'er changed her battle style again, directly stabbing at the pirates' exposed necks and eyes with her sword. Now these pirates were doomed. How could they block a peak stage spiritual pedestal tier elite? Moreover, Zhu Xian'er was a genius of the North region. Previously she just didn't want blood, but now that her killing intent rose, how could these people block it? Hu Niu, on the other hand, liked to compete. After proving that she could beat that armor, she instantly lost interest and punched repeatedly, killing the pirates one by one. Her killing nature was terrifyingly great. Now that she appeared, her eyes immediately turned red, and she continuously chased after the pirates. "Boss, we can't hold on anymore." The pirates all cried out, and some already escaped back to the black ship. Their discipline was lax and they were just a random troop. The skinny short man snorted and said, "A bunch of trash. Isn't this tarnishing my reputation? Come, prepare an origin crystal cannon and blast that brat to death." "Boss, why did you kill that brat?" asked the tall man. As the saying goes, to capture the bandits, first capture the leader. To shoot a man, first shoot his horse. This brat is the leader. Killing him will naturally be a success. What's more, are you willing to blast that pretty girl into a bloody pulp? Big Metal Head said disdainfully. The tall man scratched his head and said, "Of course. Boss, it's not like you don't know me. I only like little girls and boys." "Get lost, you pervert." On the body of the black ship, a few windows were opened, and a few pitch-black cannons poked out. All of them were aimed at Ling Han, emitting a frightening cold light. Ling Han instantly felt a sense of danger. He hurriedly flung Helian Xuanshu aside and said, "Hai Niu, stand to the side. This thing seems very powerful." Just as he finished speaking, Xiao, 3 flashes of white light shot out towards Ling Han. This speed was really too fast, so fast that by the time he realized that he had been attacked, the attacks had already arrived in front of him, and there was absolutely no way he could dodge them. In that instant, Ling Han made a judgment in his heart. This was equivalent to the level of the spiritual infant tier. If he activated the thunder barrier, then he had at least a 30% chance of blocking it. However, time was too rushed and he didn't have the time to do so. Hong, 3 flashes of white light surged past, and Ling Han disappeared without a trace. However, in the next instant he reappeared unharmed. He entered the Black Tower. Who? On the black ship, everyone was dumbfounded. In their impression, a blast from the origin crystal cannon would blast anyone into dregs, so why was this brat completely fine? "Blast, blast again!" Big Metal Head yelled. Ling Han's figure flew up and charged towards the black ship. He didn't want to become a live target. The muzzle of the cannon moved, continuously aiming at him. However, Ling Han used the demon fairy step sometimes to the left and sometimes to the right. It was so strange that it made people want to vomit blood. They couldn't track his movements at all, and couldn't fire another shot even after a long while. Once this origin crystal cannon was fired, the Flower Blossom tier warrior certainly couldn't dodge, because the speed was far inferior. However, the cannon muzzle still had to be aimed at Ling Han to fire. With this time as a buffer, how could a few spiritual ocean tier and spiritual pedestal tier cannoneers catch Ling Han's figure? In just a few steps, Ling Han had already arrived above the hull of the ship, slashing towards Big Metal Head with his sword. To catch bandits, first catch the king, that was what that guy said himself. However, Big Metal Head only looked coldly at Ling Han, and didn't have the slightest intention of dodging this sword. Wang! This sword slashed down, but a black screen of light appeared on the hull of the ship, forcibly blocking this attack. Ha ha! Shoot for me! Big Metal Head roared fiercely with a grin. Instantly, 3 streaks of white light shot over. This time they aimed in this direction ahead of time, as if knowing that Ling Han would definitely be blocked at this position. This ship was strange. Ling Han hurriedly entered the Black Tower again, and then immediately came out, faster than most people's reaction ability. They didn't realize that he disappeared for a split second. Even if Big Metal Head's cultivation was also at the Flower Blossom tier, he only had a misconception that something seemed to have happened to his eyes, and why was it Ling Han's turn to dodge? This ship, where did you guys get it from? Ling Han asked curiously. That sturdy armor, the ship's own defense, and the origin crystal cannon, such an armed force should belong to a super force, so how did it fall into the hands of a few pirates? None of your business. Big Metal Head snorted. Our boss said it's none of your business, the tall man mimicked. You shut your fuck you mouth, hurry and command the cannoneers to shoot all these people down. Big Metal Head slapped him. Boss, didn't you say those 2 beauties couldn't bear to kill? The tall man said, feeling wronged. Nonsense, brothers are all going to be killed by them. Who cares if they're beautiful or not? Kill them all. Big Metal Head said fiercely. Kill, kill. The tall man became excited, running towards the cabin. Ling Han frowned, and his figure spread out, already arriving by Zhu Xian'er's side, and said, Xian'er, enter the Black Tower. And Zhu Xian'er immediately nodded, not asking why. Xiao, her figure immediately disappeared. Ling Han put Hu Niu into the Black Tower again. Helian Sun Shui couldn't be put in and didn't need to be. Her physical arts surpassed the level of the spiritual infant tier, so she didn't fear that origin crystal cannon at all. Where are those 2 girls, one big and one small? Big Metal Head's expression was strange. How did these 2 live people suddenly disappear? He wasn't stupid, and immediately slapped his thigh. Just now you also dodged like this. Chapter 590. You guessed it right, but there's no reward. Ling Han laughed loudly, and his figure flew up again. Holding the purple demon sword in his hand, he used the demon fairy step to prevent the opponent from aiming at him while he began to accumulate power, preparing to use the ultimate move 10,000 techniques return to 1. When the mysterious 3000 was used to attack a large number of enemies, the effect was great, but when used to attack 10,000 techniques return to 1 was naturally even more awesome. Gathering 3,000 attacks into 1 attack, the destructive power was simply unimaginable. Shoot! Big Metal Head exclaimed. The cannon moved here and there, but it could not aim at Ling Han, so it simply gave up on him and turned to face Helian Xuanxue. Helian Xuanxue's face instantly turned pale with fright, and she said to Ling Han, I didn't hit them, why are they hitting me? Because they're bad people and bad people won't reason with you. Ling Han explained, so when dealing with bad people, you don't have to reason with them, just swing the brick and smash. Oh, Helian Xuanxue nodded, made an aiming gesture, and then swished the brick in her hand over. The brick flew furiously, and just as it was about to hit the black ship, a black screen of light suddenly appeared on the body of the ship, forming a protective shield just like before. But this time the light screen did not have the desired effect. With a bang, the light screen was actually completely shattered by the brick. The brick's momentum did not stop, and it directly sank into the hull of the ship. Then, continuous banging sounds could be heard, and Xiao, the brick, flew out from the other side of the ship like a meteor, shooting into the distance. "My brick!" Helian Xuanxue exclaimed, and hurriedly chased after it on the waves. Hong long long, the black ship made a strange sound, and there were flames and black smoke coming out. The hull of the ship actually began to tilt, and it was actually about to sink. Ling Han gritted his teeth. Helian Xuanxue's brick was really awesome, directly sinking a large spirit tool-level treasure ship. Bang bang bang. The ship's hull began to explode. The cannons on the ship could turn crystals into attacks. This was very powerful, but it was also extremely unstable. Now that the ship's hull was on fire, these specially processed crystals also exploded. This was equivalent to several hundred spiritual infant-tier elites bombarding the ship's hull. The destructive power created was too terrifying, and the entire ship practically disintegrated in an instant. Most of the pirates didn't even have time to react, and were directly blasted into dregs. Only Big Metal Head and his tall assistant managed to escape in time. After all, they were in the Flower Blossom tier, and it was one thing for them to be unable to stand against spiritual infant tier cultivators, but it could be seen that they were quick on the uptake and managed to escape in time, which still left them with a sliver of hope. Unfortunately, Ling Han was waiting for them. Ling Han knocked them unconscious with 2 slaps, and directly brought them into the Black Tower. Han. Helian Xuanxue returned with the brick. Seeing Ling Han suddenly disappear from where he stood, she couldn't help but be very displeased. This guy would sometimes suddenly disappear, making her wait for half a day. So bad. In the Black Tower, Ling Han slapped Big Metal Head and the tall man awake. Since they entered the Black Tower, then they shouldn't think about leaving in this lifetime. Considering that they were pirates, they definitely killed no small number of people in these years, and the punishment of imprisonment for life wasn't too much. Where is this? After Big Metal Head woke up, he was instantly shocked. "Boss, where are we?" The tall man grabbed Big Metal Head's arm in fright. "You ask me, but who am I going to ask?" Big Metal Head immediately slapped the tall man's head. Cough. Ling Han coughed and said, "You guys are now my prisoners. If I want you guys to live, you guys can live. If I want you guys to become eunuchs, you guys will have one less thing." Hiss. Big Metal Head and the tall man hurriedly covered their crotches with their hands. The reason why men were men, wasn't it because they had one more thing? Ling Han laughed mischievously, and stretched out his finger to the left and right. Instantly, Big Metal Head and the tall man's hands were separated by an invisible force. Their bodies also floated up, and their 4 limbs were forcibly pulled into the Chinese character. You don't mess around. My boss is very powerful. If you dare to touch a single hair of mine, my boss will definitely slaughter you. Big Metal Head's face paled in fright, and he hurriedly warned Ling Han. Ling Han gave an and said, "Aren't you the boss?" "I'm their boss, but I still have a boss." Big Metal Head said stubbornly, "I'll give you a word of advice, don't ever go against my boss. Although my boss is also in the Flower Blossom tier, he grasps many strange things, and his battle prowess is too terrifying." "Oh, just like that ship," Ling Han said offhandedly. I only have a silver dragon ship, and our boss uses a golden dragon ship. That's what's called powerful." Big Metal Head said proudly. Ling Han deliberately sighed and said, "First time being so awesome as a prisoner. Forget it, I'll just castrate him first." "Castrate? You can't castrate him." Big Metal Head's face turned green from fright. "Aren't you afraid my boss will find you for revenge?" "Not afraid," Ling Han said with a smile. Although these words were simple and clear, Big Metal Head didn't know how to refute. On the side, the tall man didn't even dare to fart, afraid that Ling Han would notice him. Ling Han summoned the bone sword and said, "I ask one question, you guys answer one answer together. Whoever answers slowly, I'll peel off one of his eggs. After peeling the egg, I'll peel off the root. You guys calculate how many eggs and roots do you have for me to peel off." Wasn't this simple? 2 eggs, the tall man said. 1 egg, Big Metal Head said, almost at the same time. Clearly, Ling Han's threat was very effective. Boss, you only have 1 egg?" The tall man immediately asked curiously. Ha ha ha, I'm dying of laughter. How can there be someone with 2 eggs? Big Metal Head, on the other hand, laughed so hard that tears looked like they were about to come out. Were these 2 buffoons? Ling Han waved the bone sword, making the 2 shut their mouths, and then said, "Who's your boss?" Feng Weiqi. Big Metal Head. Ling Han glanced at the tall man. Was this guy really stupid? He then said to Big Metal Head, "What's the background of this Feng Weiqi?" "I don't know either. I was originally a tyrant here, running amok in these waters. Who wouldn't fear me? But our boss is more powerful. After coming here 3 years ago, he subdued me and gave me that ship, making me even more powerful," Big Metal Head said. "And that armor, was it also given to you by Feng Weiqi?" Ling Han asked again. "Yes." Big Metal Head nodded obediently. "Where's Feng Weiqi now?" Ling Han asked. Big Metal Head was a bit hesitant, but when the bone sword flashed and blood blossomed in his crotch, he immediately shivered in fright and said, "Our boss is on Blackwood Island. He's always been there." "And where is Blackwood Island?" "In the southwest corner of the bewildering Mistwater domain. Normal people can't find it at all." Big Metal Head actually revealed a proud expression, but then immediately felt his balls ache, and his expression immediately collapsed. Chapter 591. Ling Han hesitated slightly, then nodded in agreement. First of all, battle prowess below Shattering Void Tier 7 stars couldn't hurt him at all, and the elites above this were already like phoenix feathers and scaled horns, pitifully few. Could it be that Hellion Rong was just for show? He had the cultivation of the 9th layer of the Shattering Void Tier, and his battle prowess had even reached 10 stars. He was the top 3 experts in the Northern Sea, standing side by side with Xianyu family's patriarch, Xianyu Tong, and it was difficult to distinguish second and third. However, the first was definitely Wen family's Wenran Jia. Although he was also at the 9th layer of the Shattering Void Tier, his battle prowess was shockingly 11 stars. 1 star, 1 world. Even if Xianyu Tong and Hellion Rong joined forces, they could only barely match Wenran Jia. And Wenran clan's Shattering Void Tier elites were obviously a notch higher than the other 2 great royal clans, forcing the 2 great royal clans to ally for self-protection. Xinyu royal clan's ancestral land was also on a huge island, called Peaceful Star Island. It was extremely far from Dome Cloud Island, and even Shattering Void Tier elites would have to travel for several days. Hellion Rong brought 9 Shattering Void Tier elites from the clan, plus Ling Han, Hellion Sun Shui, and Hu Niu, and rushed towards Peaceful Star Island. They didn't keep on traveling, and after traveling for 3 days, they stopped on a deserted island to rest, taking out all kinds of food and starting to eat. This was obviously in response to Hu Niu's strong request. Niu would accompany a fight, but not eating was out of the question. Even Hellion Rong and the others were full of praise for the food in the Black Tower. This was truly a delicacy that even immortals would drool over, especially with the addition of all kinds of precious medicinal ingredients, like 10,000-year-old treasured pearl. How many of them were there in the entire vast lands? Even Hellion royal clan couldn't take it out. There was no other reason. Every 10,000 years there would be a reckoning, and all living things would die out. Other than the living things in the mystery realm, how many could survive? This child is truly a genius. Hellion Rong hugged Ling Jianshui, his brows smoothing out, his old heart at ease. Ling Han still appropriately revealed some of his trump cards, such as a spirit tool that could accommodate living things. This was also very rare in the divine realm, but it wasn't unique, so he dared to reveal his wealth. However, only the most trusted people knew that the Black Tower wasn't as simple as a spatial divine tool. Ling Jianshui was already half a year old, and his brute force had impressively advanced into the Gushing Spring tier, which was practically frightening. When he was a bit older and opened up his spirit base to cultivate, his brute force would probably advance into the Flower Blossom tier, which was an incredibly high starting point. This was because his ancestral blood was too pure and thick. Even Hellion Sun Shui was far from comparable, and the Sea race valued bloodline the most, making Hellion Rong have the impulse to make Ling Jianshui the next clan head of the Hellion family. Of course, this was also related to Ling Han's willingness to throw resources at his son. What 10,000-year-old treasured pearl, 10th tier spiritual liquid? This brat bathed in these good things every day. So if this physique wasn't unreasonable, then there would be no justice. The premise was obviously that Ling Jianshui could withstand such medicinal power. If it were someone else, even if they had the same father, they still wouldn't be able to withstand this fortune. Ling Han, Sun Shui is my clan's most resplendent pearl. Your first child has to be adopted into our Hellion family. Surnamed Hellion. Hellion Rong decided to snatch away his beloved. This child was really too outstanding. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head and said, "This is my first son, so he naturally has to be surnamed Ling. This king has already betrothed the clan's most resplendent pearl to you, so shouldn't I want a grandson?" Hellion Rong said shamelessly. This was a super genius, and his future achievements would definitely surpass his predecessors, and it was even possible for him to reach a height that rivaled the imperial family. So no matter what, he had to strive to the end. Your Hellion family is numerous and powerful, with clansmen numbering in the tens of thousands. My Ling family only has me, the sole heir, and you have the nerve to fight with me, not doing it. Ling Han gave a meaningful glance, making Hellion Sun Shui use the excuse of breastfeeding the child to snatch his son back. Hellion Rong couldn't help but lament. A grown girl couldn't be kept at home, and once she married out, she'd belong to someone else's family, siding with an outsider too quickly. He refused to give up and said, "Then before the age of 5, this child will first stay in the main family. After all, the main family's accumulation is deep, and can give the child the best growth conditions. Besides, this king is also worried that Sun Shui won't have enough milk, and will suffer the child." Hellion Sun Shui was dumbfounded. Was this still a biological father? In order to snatch the child, even his own daughter became the target of attack. "My chest is a bit small, but is it to the extent of starving my son?" Ling Han laughed mischievously, and took out all kinds of precious treasures from the Black Tower. Every time he took one out, Hellion Rong's face twitched. Some treasures were owned by the Hellion family, but the quantity wasn't that terrifying. 1,000-year-old ginsengs were counted in baskets, so how could this quantity compare? And things like 10,000-year-old treasured pearls and 10th tier spiritual liquid were things that the Hellion family couldn't take out. Complete defeat. Hellion Rong was speechless. Speaking of the child's cultivation, it was definitely better to follow Ling Han. A clan actually couldn't compare to one person. Hellion Rong expressed great pressure, and the area of shadow in his heart was even more enormous. After all was said and done, he still got Ling Han to agree to let Hellion Sun Shui's second child be adopted into the Hellion family. The old guy was really very proactive, egging Ling Han and Hellion Sun Shui to quickly rest and work hard to cultivate the next generation, making Hellion Sun Shui go crazy. Another 5 days later, Silent Star Island was finally in sight. A figure flew out, blocking their path. It was a martial artist with a pair of bird feathers growing on his back. His feet were like duck feet, webbed, and his mouth was flat, protruding out, looking very funny. However, Hellion Rong and the others didn't have the slightest hint of a smile. For people like them who possess divine beast bloodline, the more atavistic their appearance was, the purer their bloodline was, and the more advantage they had in martial arts cultivation. For example, if they were born in the form of a dragon, then as long as they grew up they wouldn't need to cultivate at all. After reaching adulthood, they would be the strongest true dragon in the world, at least so in the vast lands. Ha ha ha. Hunyo couldn't hold back, and laughed loudly as she said, Ling Han, do you think this duck is better stewed or roasted?" As soon as these words were spoken, Hellion Rong and the others secretly cried out in alarm. This wasn't an ordinary member of the sea race, but a fierce general under the Xianyu royal family. His name was Obuluo, a dignified shattering void tier elite. As expected, Obuluo revealed an angry expression, and said coldly, "Well, so Lord Hellion and the others are here to eat this general. No need to speak. General O is a fierce general under the Xianyu royal family. Who dares to be disrespectful to General O?" Hellion Rong said indifferently. His status was above Obuluo's, and even if he was interceding on Hunyo's behalf, he wouldn't lose his imposing manner. Obuluo obviously wouldn't bicker with a little girl. The one who would lose face like this would only be him. He immediately waved his hand and said, "The king has been respectfully waiting for many days, please." His gaze swept over Ling Han carrying a chill. Chapter 592. Big Metal Head snorted and said, "Still not letting us in? Wait a moment, Big Brother Metal." The small boat sailed forward again and soon, a strange brilliance flickered, as if it had entered a viscous space and was forcibly squeezed out. "Big Brother Metal, please come up," the four said. Ling Han and the other two boarded the small boat, and the four rowed and squeezed in again. "Huh, why is this girl carrying a brick?" When the four saw the thing in Helian Xuanshua's hands, they couldn't help but be curious. This girl couldn't be thinking of using this thing to smash their boss, right? Ling Han laughed and said, "This girl lacks a sense of security. The brick is for self-defense." The four snickered and said, "Following our big brother, she'll definitely feel very safe." Ling Han didn't pay any more attention to them. A distance of a few li was all it took for an expert to row to the shore. Not only were there strange black trees growing everywhere on Blackwood Island, even the ground was black, and it felt very hard when one stepped on it. "Where's Big Brother?" Big Metal Head asked. "Big Brother is naturally still in the cavern," a miscellaneous soldier said casually. "Where's the cavern?" Ling Han interrupted. A miscellaneous soldier sized up Ling Han and said, "Big Metal Head, this little brother of yours doesn't know the rules. Is this something he should be asking?" Big Metal Head's ferocious appearance was revealed, and he immediately slapped that miscellaneous soldier's ear, yelling, "Just answer if you're asking. What's with all the nonsense?" This gave those four miscellaneous soldiers a fright. How could he suddenly change his face? They looked at each other and said, "Big Metal Head, Big Brother ordered that no one is to disturb him when he enters the cavern. Since you've already sent the beauty over, please go back." "Brother, what do you say?" Big Metal Head asked Ling Han. "Nothing," Ling Han said with a smile. "Take care of them." "Yes, brother." Big Metal Head immediately made his move. Pa 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 pa. 4 palms passed by, and the 4 people's heads immediately burst open, becoming 4 corpses. Ling Han summoned Hunyao. This little girl was very clever, so there was no need to worry that she would encounter any danger to her life. As for Zhu Xian'er, she'd better stay in the Black Tower. Although she was a genius, she was far from being able to compare with Hunyao's freakishness. "Cave, lead the way." Ling Han kicked Big Metal Head, who was still shocked by Hunyao's sudden appearance. He had never even heard of a spatial spirit tool that could accommodate living things, so he was obviously shocked. Big Metal Head led the way in front, while Ling Han and the other two followed behind. Helian Xuanxua looked around with a face full of curiosity as she pulled on the corner of Ling Han's clothes with her left hand, always looking like a little wife and a doormat. There were obviously a lot of miscellaneous soldiers on the island, but Big Metal Head cleared the way. He was a Flower Blossom tier elite, after all, and killed one as soon as he found one. He was vicious and merciless, living up to his identity as a pirate. However, as time passed, it was naturally impossible to silence them all. Suddenly, the island was filled with alarms. Pung pung pung. A loud sound was heard, and 3 enormous monsters appeared. These were truly monsters. They were humanoid but were 10 meters tall. Their entire bodies emitted a black metallic luster, and they were actually 3 iron men. Puppets. Ling Han was surprised. Previously, many people thought that the rock spirit was a puppet, but in reality, these 3 big guys in front of him were the real puppets. His heart moved, and he summoned the rock spirit, saying, "Beat them up." The rock spirit instantly pounded its chest with both hands, then fiercely charged out, starting a fierce battle with the 3 iron men. They didn't seem to be human, but there was a huge difference between the two. Puppets were puppets, and like corpse soldiers, they didn't have life. However, the rock spirit was completely different. It was a life nurtured by a rare stone, and could continuously grow and improve itself. Now, the rock spirit reached the peak of the Flower Blossom tier, and only lacked an opportunity to break through to the spiritual infant tier. However, it didn't rely on its own comprehension to break through, but rather absorbed the power of the rare stone to complete this crucial leap. Go find a cave, don't stop, Ling Han said to Big Metal Head. Yes, yes. When Big Metal Head saw the rock spirit unleash its invincible might and completely suppress the 3 Iron Men puppets, he couldn't help but shiver inwardly. To him, these 3 puppets were invincible in the Flower Blossom tier, impervious to swords and spears, and difficult to injure by sharp weapons. Moreover, their power was endless. But now, they were beaten up by Ling Han's stone puppets, almost becoming 3 metal pancakes. Brother, please follow me. He became more and more respectful, and the scales in his heart completely tilted towards Ling Han. They arrived halfway up the mountain, and saw that the belly of the mountain had been dug open, revealing a dark and gloomy space. There were a few scattered torches, and they could faintly see the situation. Pong, 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 loud sounds were heard as the rock spirit rushed over, obviously getting rid of the 3 puppets. Ling Han walked into the cave and activated the Eye of Truth. Even if it was completely dark inside the cave, it did not affect his vision. He could clearly feel that the space inside the cave was shockingly large, as if it was a small town. Moreover, the outlines of many places were very strange. His heart moved, and he said, "The silver dragon ship that Feng Weiqi gave you, was it taken out here?" "Ah, brother, you're really amazing guessing this," Big Metal Head said in surprise. This time he really wasn't flattering but was shocked. Ling Han didn't guess randomly. This cave's shape was very strange, and if a ship was placed here, it would just be enough to fill in the long concave pit on the ground. It turned out that Feng Weiqi discovered an ancient ruin and obtained a treasure. He still stayed here all day, obviously unearthing even more precious things. Ling Han was truly interested. The silver dragon ship was very awesome, and the origin crystal cannon could pose an absolute threat to Flower Blossom tier warriors, and the light screen it opened reached spiritual infant tier level. Come to think of it, the golden dragon ship was definitely stronger, and Feng Weiqi was still digging below. Was there an even more shocking discovery? Ling Han walked quickly towards the depths of the cave. There were traces of excavation everywhere, and many things should have been unearthed. Come to think of it, the 3 puppets should also have been unearthed here. After walking a few steps, Ling Han suddenly became vigilant, and immediately swung his sword. Hunyo's reaction wasn't slow either, and with a roar she charged out. Pung pung, 2 silver colossi appeared. It was another 2 puppets, but this time they weren't Iron Men but Silver Men. They were not as hard as Iron Men. These 2 silver men were like humans, and their bodies were surprisingly flexible. Ling Han's sword slashed past, and Hunyo's fist blasted past. The silver puppet's body immediately caved in, but it didn't break open. It swayed a few times like water ripples, and the 2's attacks were neutralized. They were still in the Flower Blossom tier, but in terms of defense they were much stronger than the Iron Men from before. Hardness was easy to break, and these 2 puppets perfectly solved this flaw. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 593. Ling Han was surprised and said, "What metal is this? It's actually like liquid." He slashed out a few more times, attaching sword chi. Pu, piu, piu, the 2 silver puppets were slashed with many wounds, but they immediately healed at an extremely fast speed as if they were really made of water. Cut open, then it was fine to recover. Pung pung, the 2 silver puppets also launched an attack at Ling Han's group of 4. Although their bodies were soft like water when attacked, these 2 fists were extraordinarily ferocious. When the fists landed, a terrifying power circulated, extremely frightening. "Come, let's compete," Ling Han said with a smile. Putting away his sword, he also clenched his fists and charged forward. Pung, his 2 fists collided fiercely with the silver puppets. Instantly, the 2 puppets' forearms surged with a wave at the same time, starting from the fists and spreading towards the shoulders. However, during this process, the fist power that Ling Han blasted out was also gradually dissolved, and when it reached the shoulders, the fist power was also dissolved cleanly. Ling Han didn't have this kind of body structure, and could only take this hit head-on. However, his physique was on the same tier rare metal level, and taking this hit head-on was nothing. His internal organs were only shaken, but once the indestructible Heaven's Scroll circulated, it recovered. "Mommy!" Big Metal Head exclaimed, his face turning green. He clearly knew the two silver puppets' offensive and defensive power. He completely expected that they wouldn't be injured under Ling Han's heavy fists, but Ling Han actually took 2 hits and was fine, which made him incredibly shocked. To him, the two silver puppets were completely monsters, but Ling Han was even more monstrous than monsters. At least, the two monsters still had fluctuations. Ling Han revealed a smile and said, "I once heard of a strange metal called original mercury. It's in a liquid form, and its gravity doesn't break. Come to think of it, these two puppets were forged from original mercury, which is why they have such strange characteristics. However, this thing is most afraid of fire." Ling Han's hands shook, and the 5 elements Chaos Lotus swayed lightly, converting all of his origin power into fire attribute. Instantly, a raging flame wrapped around his hands. He leaped up and charged toward the two silver puppets again. Boom! His fist landed on the chest of one of the silver puppets, and his fist went in without any suspense. However, as soon as he pulled his fist out, the silver puppet would immediately heal the wound. But this time it would not be so easy. Flames blazed on Ling Han's fist, and a terrifyingly high temperature circulated. This wound began to continuously expand, and this puppet was like a piece of ice that had come into contact with a fire source, immediately beginning to melt. Found it! In the chest cavity of the puppet, there was a silver orb that was glowing, covered in dense runes. Puppet heart. This was the puppet's brain, heart, and source of power. Without it, it was just a pile of scrap metal. Ling Han reached out to grab the heart, but countless silver metals swept over, hiding the heart and preventing Ling Han from destroying it. "Do you think you can hide?" laughed Ling Han. The flames on his hand raged, and the metal melted like snow. The heart reappeared in front of him. Boom! The other silver puppet naturally would not just stand by and watch. It raised its fists high and smashed down on Ling Han's back. Ling Han did not even turn his head. He simply pressed his left hand back to block this attack. Bang! But before the silver puppet's attack landed, Hellion Xuanxua had already rushed out and smashed the brick on the silver puppet. How violent was she? With one smash, the entire body of the silver puppet fluctuated, and then it was slapped away, smashing heavily into the mountain wall. With a crack like an egg, it shattered, splashed, and turned into a pool of liquid. But immediately, all the liquid began to wriggle, squirming toward the exposed puppet heart. Obviously, it wanted to reassemble its body. This girl's brute force was really terrifying. With one blow, she smashed such a powerful puppet into pieces. Ling Han stretched out his hand and grabbed onto the puppet's heart, suddenly pulling it out. The silver puppet immediately fell limp, wriggling incessantly as if it still wanted to transform into a human form, but was unable to do so no matter how hard it tried. On the other side, Hunyo also picked up the second puppet heart, disintegrating that puppet's battle prowess. With a wave of his hand, Ling Han stored the bodies of the two silver puppets into the Black Tower. He wanted to study them, and maybe he could recover the two puppets' battle prowess. In the future, he would throw them to his parents' side to protect them. They continued to walk towards the depths of the cave, and before long another 4 silver puppets appeared, launching an attack on them. Ling Han didn't bother to make a move, and pushed Hellion Xuanxua out, scaring the girl into shrieking while slapping the brick away. Pa pa pa! The 4 silver puppets were instantly smashed into pieces. Ling Han then calmly picked up the puppet heart, easily dispersing this wave of attacks. Big Metal Head was dumbfounded. The combination of Ling Han's group of 3 was too terrifying. To him, the cave's defense was practically impenetrable, but in front of Ling Han's group, this defense was like paper. "Brother, this isn't the most powerful puppet. The most powerful is the golden one, so be careful," he reminded, completely leaning towards Ling Han. It couldn't be helped. If Feng Weiqi found out that he brought people here, the latter definitely wouldn't spare him, so he could only pin his hopes on Ling Han. "How powerful is the Golden One?" Ling Han asked. "Probably reached the spiritual infant tier." Big Metal Head thought for a while and speculated. "I've only heard of such a guard, but never seen one. Spiritual infant tear. Ling Han revealed a pondering expression. Spiritual infant tear wasn't too terrifying, and as long as Helion Sun Shui or Hunyo restrained it slightly, then after he finished accumulating power for 10,000 techniques returned to 1, the explosive attack would be enough to kill a spiritual infant tear. Not afraid. He smiled. They continued forward. The entire mountainside was probably hollowed out, and the space inside was ridiculously large. After walking for a while, they saw 4 tall statues standing solemnly ahead, all 15 meters tall. Strange, I've never seen such a stone statue before. Big Metal Head said somewhat bewilderedly. A cold glare flashed in Ling Han's eyes, and he directly knocked Big Metal Head out, storing him in the Black Tower, and took out the Demon Birth Sword. He now had 3 high-grade treasured swords, but the Demon Birth Sword was definitely the strongest. It was a 10th tier spirit tool. Ka ka ka, the 4 statues trembled slightly, and dust and debris continuously fell down. Pong, the 4 statues took a step forward at the same time, and a dazzling golden light appeared. A terrifying presence circulated, making one's skin feel like it was about to be torn apart. As expected, they were spiritual infant tear puppets. Hai Nyo, you hold them off first, Ling Han said with a smile as he began to accumulate power, preparing for a big move. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.